Let's go, let's go. All right, y'all. So here we go. We got the show about to get started. Shout out to the Wavy Wayne Elite. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat with the fuego already. Make sure y'all hit share before we tap in. We see we got a legend in the building. I'm not playing today. I'm not playing today or tomorrow. We all the way in here. Make sure y'all share this live before we get started. We have Mr. Leslie Brathwaite himself coming to share some gems with us from his studio. Y'all see the studio is looking way flyer than mine, man. I got to step my studio game up, man. Definitely got to step my studio game up. We got the Wavy Wayne Elite in the building as well. Shout out to the Wavy Wayne Elite that's in here with us. Yes, indeed. Matter of fact, let me see. Change my view up a little bit so we can see the elite a little bit. Get a little elite love, man. Shout out to the elites that's in here. You know, the elite tonight going to be able to tap into the conversation and ask some questions and speak with Mr. Brath. I call you Leslie, Mr. Brathwaite, the GOAT. How do you prefer to be addressed?
I mean, you can call me what you want. Just don't call me Collect.
My man got bars too, you know. There we go. And he coming with the bars.
Leslie is just fine, man. You ain't gotta be. There ain't no formalities here. Definitely don't call me the GOAT. I am not the GOAT. I might fit the description, but I'm not the GOAT.
Okay, well, look, I think that'll be a good place for us to start. Then, if you're not the GOAT, in your opinion, who is the GOAT? Who do you give GOAT status to as far as engineering, mixing in this game? Who you giving the GOAT status to?
I mean, honestly, I can go with some of the greats. I mean, legendary, just recently passed a couple of years ago, Bruce Swedien. For those of you who don't know who Bruce Swedien is, he was my mentor, a friend. I got to know him over the years. Worked with him first in '95 on Michael Jackson's History album. For those of you who don't know him, he mixed all of Michael's records. A lot of amazing people, pretty much anybody Quincy Jones has ever worked with, he's mixed. But he's a legendary guy. Bruce Swedien, learned a lot from him. So I would never ever take the credit of being any kind of GOAT, when it comes to him. And then as far as people, I mean, even some of my peers, man, people that are living, I mean, some of my friends. I love Manny Marquand, good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Amazing mixer. Serban, amazing mixer. Yeah. And these guys are all my friends and my peers, and I still revere them as great mixers and good ears and all that. So it's, for me, it's never about saying I'm the best. I'm the best me. I'm the best version of me.
Right.
But I never ever got into comparing myself on any level. Even like, as a kid growing up in the 80s, I was a nerd, and it wasn't popular to be a nerd when I was a nerd, and I was okay with it. And I never compared myself to anybody else, never compared my journey to anybody else. So my mind doesn't even work that way, in a sense of like who's better than who and who's the GOAT and da-da-da. Mm-hmm. Man, I got so many friends that are doing it on my level, on a higher level than me, that I love. Like I said, Manny Marquand. I remember the day Charlie Puth's album dropped, I called Manny. I was like, bro. And we nerded out for like 3 hours on what reverbs he used. And, because I was so fascinated with the sound. And I was like, in that moment, Manny was like a god to me. Like, yeah. I was like, bro, this sounds, I could not stop listening to that album. Like, just sonically, that album sounds amazing. Like,
yeah,
if you have not gotten into that album, Charlie Puth, I'm telling you right now, go listen to his first album.
That's amazing. One to write down.
Ooh.
Yo, so I want to circle back to Bruce Swedien, because he's definitely one of the the GOATs that I put in my book. So how did that come about? How did you start to learn from Bruce Swedien and meet him? Like, what was that interaction like?
So we're funny story. So we got to start from the beginning. So, okay. And we'll get back into my childhood roots in music, but obviously, and for a lot of people, this is the same story. A lot of people my age, Michael Jackson was probably the first real introduction into my love of music. I was so into Michael's catalog and Michael as an artist and the sound. Quincy as a producer. I was all in. So Wayne, where you go? Did I lose you? Hope I ain't losing.
I'm here. I'm here.
Did
I'm
we
here. I'm
Oh,
still
okay.
here.
I just make sure we ain't lose you. Because then you're going to come back and be like, okay, tell the whole story again. I'll be like, damn it, Wayne.
Nah, my bad. I'm right here tapped in.
No, it's all good. So as a kid, I just loved Michael. I grew up on Michael. Reading the back of those album credits was the reason I wanted to be an engineer. It's the reason I even found out what an engineer was. I remember I used to sit around listening to albums, and I'm reading the credits, and I kept pronouncing his name wrong. I kept saying Bruce Swedien. And I would be like, oh, who's this Bruce Swedien dude? And then I would go, back in the day, we didn't have Google, so I had to go to the encyclopedia set and look up what a recording engineer was. And they had pictures of the studio. And
you had the Britannica in the crib?
Yeah. We had both sets. We had the Britannica and the other one. It was like a blue set and a brown set.
Yeah.
We had both of them. You know, my mom balled out and bought both sets, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I would go to the encyclopedia and look up what is a recording engineer. And they would have pictures of the recording studio. I remember even at an early age, I would see those and be like, yo, that's what I want to do. I want to be in there with all the knobs and the buttons. And so fast forward, and again, we'll get back to that story because that story is a very, that part of my childhood is very important to why I even became a mixer. And we'll talk more about that. Okay. But so fast forward, you know, I'm working with Dallas Austin here in Atlanta. And then Dallas gets the call to go work with Michael.
Okay.
So obviously, and at the time I was his recording engineer. So I'm like, I didn't think I would get to go. I was just like, oh, Dallas just has me recording here, and he's probably going to go and take, you know, the mix engineer and da. And then Dallas came to me and was like, yo, you want to go to LA to work with Michael? And I couldn't even believe he asked me that. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, so here's the thing. So as much as I was excited to meet and work with Michael, mm-hmm. I was more excited and more nervous to meet Bruce. I was like, I'm about to meet Bruce Swedien, like the GOAT god of mixing. And like, I was nervous. So, you know, we get there. And for the first 2 weeks, we were there for like quite a few months. Michael had that way of like, when you're working with Michael, he's going to kidnap you for half the year kind of thing. So we got there in January of 95. And for the first 2 weeks, we didn't see Michael, didn't meet Bruce. So I kind of said to myself, okay, this is how this trip is going to go. We just come out here. They stick us in a room. We're going to work on some stuff. Hopefully I get credit. And, you know, at least I'll get a Michael Jackson credit. That's kind of how I was thinking at the time.
Yeah.
And then we saw Michael walk through the halls a few times. And it would be like this, like, you know, Bigfoot sighting, like, because the way we were at Record One in LA. So every now and then we would be looking forward, but in the reflection, hold on, did my camera freeze? Hold on. In the reflection of the glass that we can see in the front, we could see who was walking by in the hallway behind us. So every now and then we would see Michael walk by the hallway, and then we would all rush to the glass to see if we see him. Like, it was like, you know, a bunch of kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he wore the same thing every day. He wore the exact same outfit every day. He wore a pair of black pants, a white T-shirt, and a red button down over the white T-shirt, but the red button down was open.
Uh-huh.
Same uniform every day.
Iconic look. Was there a reason behind this? Is there a reason behind this look, or is there simplicity?
I never got an understanding of the uniform. Oh, I do understand the uniform and from a certain perspective. I remember Steve Jobs was talking about wearing the same clothes all the time, and I pretty much wear the same uniform all the time. Like I always wear a T-shirt, a plain T-shirt, jeans, and then some Jordans.
Yeah.
And I think I've learned that there's this thing about highly intelligent people that we just don't like to take up our time deciding what outfits to wear, so we tend to wear uniforms. So I'm saying we because I hope I'm highly intelligent.
Yo, I love how you put yourself in that category. Well deserved to be. But I didn't know that you was a Jordan man. That's one thing that Wikipedia don't tell us. So like, can we please see what heat is on the feet today? Like,
I mean, are we gonna do this right now?
That's definitely what we. Oh man, see, hey, he got some real heat on. I ain't gonna pull my dad's out right now. You know what I'm saying?
If we doing it, we doing it. You know what I mean? Okay.
Look, all right. Look,
but So
this what I'm rocking today. You know?
Oh, I see you. Okay.
You see?
I see you.
Y'all don't judge me.
So apparently that's what highly intelligent people do. We wear the same shit every day. Sorry for cursing. I have a
You
tendency.
please.
Um, so yeah, he would wear the same thing every day. And so we would see him walking by, and then we finally get to meet him. One day we're sitting there and he walks in the room, he introduces himself as if he needs to introduce himself. And we finally get to meet him. So there's more of that. There's more of kind of like a couple more days of him coming in, saying hi, just telling Dallas what he wants, and Dallas making records. And then one day he came in and he said, "Hey, want you guys to come over and meet Bruce." And I was like, "This is the moment."
This is it.
And I was like super nervous. And we walk in the room and they're talking, and then Bruce looks over at me. He realizes who I am in the mix of things. And he goes, "You're Leslie." And I was like, "Yes, and you're Bruce." And he was like, "Come sit." And I sat down and we just started talking. And then he was like, at the time, I forgot what song he was working on. And I was like, "Well, I'm gonna let you go ahead and work." And I started, he was like, "Nah, sit, mix with me. Come on." And I was like, "Did he just say sit and mix with me? Like, what?" And so I just sat down and we had a whole afternoon of like me and him just bonding, talking about everything under the sun. I'm from St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. So when I told him that, we had about a 2-hour conversation about that, because him and his wife had been to St. Thomas quite a few times. They loved it. Okay. So that was an instant connection piece for us, where I'm from a place where him and his wife used to vacation all the time and they love it. Yeah. And so that was an easy conversation. And then we just sat there all afternoon, and he's teaching me tricks and telling me this and telling me how he records Michael and the things he does. And then it became a thing. Every day I would go in, and I would always be the first one there. I would get there first, and Bruce would come in the room and look for me. Like, he'd be like, "Hey, Leslie, how you doing? Come on over." And then I'd go over there and we sit and talk, and he'd teach me stuff. And there'd be days when Dallas and them didn't even show up to the studio. It'd just be me and Bruce in the studio. Yeah. So we bonded in that time period in 95, working on the History album. And then we just kept in touch from there. And Bruce also has a connection to Full Sail, because he knew Al Schlesinger and all these people connected to Full Sail. Yeah. And so once he found out I was a Full Sail alum, and I'm going back, giving back every year, we meet up at Full Sail a couple of times, and then our bond just grows. And him and his wife would invite me. The cool thing about Bruce and his wife is still alive. Her name is B. So she still lives in, they live in Ocala, Florida. Okay. And Ocala is on the way to Orlando. I drive every time I go. When I go to Full Sail, I drive from Atlanta to Orlando, and Ocala is on the way. So it became this kind of tradition where most of the times when I'm driving down to Orlando, I would stop off at their house, or when I'm leaving. Yeah. And they would invite me over for dinner. They would invite me for breakfast. So it just became this bond. And it was super dope to have him as a friend, and just the legendary stories that he told. It was everything. Like, crazy.
I can only imagine the stories that he would tell you about, like sessions with Michael Jackson in it. Like, I know that you want to any insight on any of that, or we need to move on from that.
Michael was a very different person privately than he was publicly. And so you got and I got this sense even before Bruce told me stories. I remember, so the first time I met Michael, like individual, not in the group. So what would happen is I would come to the studio every day. This is at Record One in LA. We all had our own rental cars to drive. And so I would come to the studio like maybe 2-3 hours early before Dallas and them would get to the studio. I just figured, I'm the engineer. I got to show up early, make sure everything's ready. And what would eventually be a pattern is, so I would be sitting in the kitchen. I would order whatever food I wanted, sit in the kitchen, and I would sit there and eat and watch the OJ trials, because the OJ trials was happening while we were there working with Michael. So every day, that was my ritual. I would sit there, eat, and just watch the OJ trial. And it became, if any of you are old enough to remember that time period or had seen those trials, it became kind of like a soap opera. It was like the thing to watch every day. Is like, it was always some new character, some new dude, some housekeeper, somebody. Yeah. That it became like this show. It was, and really, I tell people this all the time, and I'm sure I've seen it in documentaries said or referred to, but the OJ trials, that chase, that car chase on the freeway,
Mhm.
that all was the birth of reality TV when you really think about it. So anyway, so I would sit there every day and I would watch these OJ trials. One day I'm sitting there eating my lunch, watching the trial, and Michael walks in. So it's just me and Michael Jackson in the kitchen. So you gotta know I'm freaking out at this point.
Exactly.
Because I'm like, again, we gotta backtrack to my childhood. This is the person who inspired me to do music, inspired me to want to do what I'm doing. I loved all his records. I had a Jerry curl. I had all the zipper jackets. I would be in the mirror, 4 hours a night like it was my job.
I need pictures.
I got pictures. I'm gonna send you some Jerry curl pictures. I got some Michael Jackson pictures. Let me tell you. So he walks in the kitchen, and his first words to me were, "Do you think he did it?" And I was like, and it was one of those moments. Have you ever seen it? Was that the Disney movie? I think it's called Inside Out, or one of the movies where the people would be talking to the person inside their head. It was like a whole community of people living inside of somebody. So I had these people living inside of me going, "Oh my God, Michael Jackson's talking to you right now. Michael Jackson's talking to you right now. What do you say? This is really crazy. Oh my God." Like,
Exactly.
And then on the outside, I had to be composed and be like, "Yeah, I actually think he did it." And then we have a very long, intellectual, unexpected conversation about whether or not O.J. Simpson killed his ex-wife. It was the wildest. That was never. It's funny how life works out. Mm-hmm. You could have asked me that question a million times of, what do you think your first interaction with Michael Jackson would be? What do you think your first conversation would be? And in a million years, I wouldn't have been able to tell you, yeah, our first conversation would be talking about whether or not OJ killed his ex-wife. Like, how do you script that? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I said, we sat there all afternoon talking about it. And then it became our thing. It became this little pattern, just like when Bruce would come to the room and invite me in and da-da-da. Me showing up 3-4 hours earlier became this thing, because Dallas didn't want to start working till like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I'm like up at like 10. So I'm going to the studio. Sure enough, I'll order lunch. Michael walks in. If you say out of a 7-day week, that probably happened 5 days every week, where Michael would just walk in. Wow. We'd sit there, eat lunch together, and we'll talk about O.J. Simpson. And we'll, so my most extensive conversations with the King of Pop is whether or not O.J. killed his ex-wife.
So did the King think that O.J. did it?
Oh, we absolutely thought he did it. I mean, there was as you watch that trial, it was hard not to think that O.J. killed that lady. And it was, and again, that trial, that's a whole nother conversation, but that trial was a cultural touch point in a sense of, I would tell you that most Black people thought he did it, but most Black people wanted him to be innocent because it was a win for Black people. It was a cultural win for us for all the injustice that we had. So that trial was less about a murder and more about the times, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes all the sense for sure.
Yeah. So it was such a crazy thing to witness. And what's the interesting story? Let me tell you what's the interesting. I got, if y'all will allow me,
we got all the leeway in the world. Let's go.
I have a couple stories that tie my life into O.J. Simpson. This is going to be so weird.
Okay.
First story makes sense to this story, which is the night of the car chase. Remember that famous chase where it was on TV? They interrupted a Knicks game to show that car chase. That night is the night that Dallas asked me, did I want to go work with Michael? Because earlier that day, he had talked to Michael's people and Michael. So that night, literally a few hours before that whole car chase, is when Dallas told me I was going to work with Michael in a couple months. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I believe, if I got my history right, that either happened in the summertime or it happened later in the summer. It was something around there. But because we didn't go work with him for another few months afterwards. But that same night, when OJ is running and we see it on TV, that's the night I find out I'm going to work with Michael. Fast forward, that becomes the bonding piece for me and Michael, is talking about OJ every day over lunch. I could trip you out even more. Do y'all really want to hear this story?
Let's
Okay.
do it.
Let's story time, y'all.
Let's go.
So my wife and I, so at the time, my wife and I, we weren't married yet at this particular time in, I believe it was 2014. And so we had just finished watching all of the they had just put out this documentary, this 5-part documentary on ESPN about OJ. And it was brilliantly done. And have any of y'all seen it? It's a brilliant documentary. It's 5 parts. It's long as hell, you know, but it's amazing. It won a documentary of the year.
Recording in progress.
My bad.
Yeah. It won, no, you're good. It won documentary of the year. So me and my wife, and at the time she was my fiance, we watched this documentary series. Then we decided to get married. And we didn't do a traditional marriage. We just went to the courthouse, got married, da-da-da.
Okay.
We then decide, you know, in keeping with our small little wedding day, da-da-da, we're like, let's just go to our favorite restaurant and have our wedding dinner. We go to the restaurant. It's a restaurant here in Atlanta called Canoe. Okay. Beautiful restaurant, amazing spot. It's right on the river. We go, we show up, and they go, oh, and I know one of the ladies that worked there, and she was like, oh, sorry, Mr. Brathwaite, we can't have y'all tonight. There's a wedding, you know, scheduled, da-da-da. Cool. So we go back to the car. We sit in the car trying to decide where we're going. She comes and taps on the glass door and says, hey, the wedding is canceled, so y'all can actually come in to eat. And we said, okay. So mind you, this is our wedding day. We just got married in the courthouse. We walk into a restaurant that's fully decorated for a wedding. They got a DJ, everything. So they paid for everything, but they canceled the wedding. We don't know what happened. So we're the only couple in this restaurant sitting there. Restaurants decked out for weddings, like serendipitous, right?
Yeah, I had just left the courthouse.
We sit down and we're eating. Then the manager comes out and she says, hey, how are you guys doing? This is the lucky couple who got to sit in the restaurant that's decorated for a wedding and da-da-da. And we found out y'all just got married today and da-da-da, da-da-da. And we're looking at her. She's talking and I'm looking at her and I'm going, oh, shit. Now, let me rewind. In the documentary, they make reference to the fact that OJ's daughter, who was in the house when her mother got murdered, lives in Atlanta and is the manager of a restaurant.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So I'm looking at this lady and I'm like, damn, she looks like OJ Simpson. Nah, it can't be. And I'm looking at her and she's talking to my wife and my wife is a marriage and family therapist. So then she says, well, what do you do? And then my wife was like, yeah, I'm a therapist. And she was like, oh my God, I need a therapist. And, and they start talking and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this can't be OJ's daughter. And I'm looking and I'm looking. And then finally she caught me looking at her and she goes, I know what you want to ask me. And I said, are you OJ Simpson's daughter? And she was like, yes.
Oh,
and she was like, normally I wouldn't even answer that question, but because she bonded with my wife. And I was like, what are the odds that
That's
we're
crazy.
in a restaurant and OJ Simpson's daughter comes to, she's the manager of the restaurant. She's not the manager anymore, but she used to be the manager of the restaurant at the time, the day we got married. Isn't that wild?
That's
anyway, I know that's a long tangent story, but I had to tell that story.
I mean, you did. You had to tell that story, you know, and you know, that's like the Holy Trinity. That's some kind of Trinity.
Isn't that wild?
You know,
isn't that so wild?
I mean, what have you summed this up in your mind? Like, what does this mean? You know what I mean? Like, what?
Somehow I'm connected to OJ Simpson. So that's the first thing. OJ Simpson is the connection point between me and Michael's most deep conversations.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I got the call to go work with Michael on the night when OJ Simpson decided to run from the cops. So I don't know. Then his daughter has a 3-hour conversation with my wife on the night we get married. So I don't know what to do with that.
Man, look, I'm gonna put this whole sequence of events into Chat GPT and see what AI has to say about this.
I don't know what to do with that one, but
Oh man,
it was wild.
that's
So
dope.
anyway, so yeah, so working with Michael. So yeah,
Mhm.
sorry those tangent stories came out of that, but yeah, yeah, working with Michael was wild, man. It was such a crazy experience to get to know him on that level.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and I mean, I got a million stories. We were there right up until I think we left in June. So we were there the whole time from January to June,
Wow.
just working with him every day,
Every day, no days
every day.
off.
No, and I didn't take a day off. I was like, I'm gonna be at the studio every day,
Yeah.
and it was amazing. And
What is it like mentally and physically, kind of working that type of schedule? You know, is it long hours, or is it
some
draining you
days
away
were
from?
lighter than some. Some
Yeah.
days were just, it got to a point, later in the trip where some days it would be me, Michael, and his assistant just sitting there playing. At the time, Sega Saturn weren't even out yet. This is '95. The
Okay.
Sega Saturn was coming out later that year. And so he has a Sega Saturn, and I'm a video game junkie. So I'm sitting there playing Sega Saturn with him. Some days we'd just be sitting there playing video games. Some days we just eat and watch the OJ trials.
Hey.
Some days we would work. But the cool thing about what we do and when you're doing something that you love is it never feels like work. So it never got to a point where I felt overloaded or
Mhm.
overworked or complaints that my other friends would have, like, oh man, I can't wait to take a vacation. I was the opposite for a long time in my career where I just didn't want to take a vacation. I felt like I'd miss out. I felt like I'd miss out on being in the studio. I'd miss out on an opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and even when I'm now as a man and a husband and a father, even when I'm on vacation, I'm very different from most of the people in the world because I'll be on vacation and I love my vacations, but I also can't wait to get back home to the studio. I love that feeling of I don't have to take a vacation from my life. I
Right.
just take a vacation to enjoy my family. But I'm not running from anything. Like, if anything, I'm on vacation thinking about, damn, I can't wait to get back to the studio. So
Yeah.
I just feel like that's such a blessing to be able to know what you want to do. And this is to everybody in the room. I think that's such a blessing to be able to know what you want to do. You pick this thing, or this thing picked you. For most of us, it picked us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you just went at it with all your heart and soul. And that's the kind of reward you get, is you get to do something, you get to sustain your life with something that you absolutely love. And when you think about how many people on this planet hate Mondays, they hate coming back off of vacation, and it's the total opposite for me. Like, I look forward to every day. I love doing what I do. I love sitting in this room right here mixing.
Yeah.
And I was just on vacation with my wife last week. We went on a Virgin Voyages cruise for my birthday celebration, and I'm on the cruise going, damn, I can't wait to get back to mix that what's the name record. You know what I mean? So it's like
Exactly.
it's such a blessing to be in that position to, like, and I always like to say that so that even in y'all's journeys, you may not be exactly where you want to be in your career. You may be struggling. You may be really putting in the work. But man, this thing is still such a blessing to be able to, like, be, even if you're in pursuit, like you're in pursuit of something that you
Mm-hmm.
love doing. It's the best feeling in the world. I can't tell you how many people are miserable at their jobs. Most people on this planet hate what they do. And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah, I
it's
mean, what advice do you have, for people that might want to kind of transition into making money from their passion? I mean, no matter what their passion is, I think, like, what's the pathway to that, or at least like what's worked for you?
I think the pathway that I find it worked for me, and I find it's the most sensible pathway, is, and it sounds a little counterintuitive, but I think the pathway is you don't think about money.
Mm-hmm.
Because the minute you start focusing on the money, all of your moves are constructed and directed towards that goal.
Yeah.
What you should think about, and this is what I always want to stress to people, think about getting better. Think about getting better at your craft. That's the thing that should, every decision you make should be through the lens of, is this going to make me better? Is this going to make me a doper engineer? Is this going to make me a doper producer? Is this going to make me a better singer? Is this going to make me a better artist? If you focus every single decision through that lens, the money will come. Now, there is practical things to that, which is, yes, you do have to kind of strategize and figure out, okay, I want to make money doing this. Let me put myself in a position. So, for instance, some of the most basic advice I've given to people is simple things like, hey man, I've been at this for a while and I ain't really making no money at this. Okay, where do you live? The answer is usually small town USA. Get out of the small town. You may need to get to a bigger city. You may need to get to a place that challenges you. I tell people all the time, when you finish school, do not move back home. That is the #1 killer of dreams.
That's a fact.
It's your home, your comfort zone, your family. They love you, but your family can be the #1 killer of dreams. I can't tell you how many times I know so many people that move back home and then their mama want them to do 50 million things and X, Y, and Z. And you don't develop a hunger for life at home because you got that comfort. You got the comfort of, if it goes bad, you're living in your mama house or you're living in your grandma house, or you don't develop that seed for survival until you gotta survive. When you gotta survive, when you ain't got no fallback and ain't no auntie house that you can go wash your clothes at, when you ain't got all of that, you figure it out. And that's what builds grit and really is the building block of success, is figuring it out. Like, figure that shit out. Like, you got to figure it out. And for everybody, it's different. There's no one formula. But I promise you, if you don't take nothing else I say tonight, don't move back home.
Yeah, that's real.
Out of your hometown. It is the worst environment for you to grow. It is the absolute worst environment for you to grow.
Yeah, Leslie, I can definitely, I can attest to that, 'cause we both are Full Sail alumni. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. When I left Full Sail, that was the main thing on my mind, is like, look, no matter what, I'm not going back to St. Louis. Like, I'm not going back. So I was either plotting between going to New York or Atlanta. I ended up going to New York City. And you end up coming from Full Sail and you moved to Atlanta, right? Okay. Yeah. So how was that, leaving, Full Sail? For me, it was like we had them living expense checks and I had about $3,000, and I found a place that I can live for 2 months off of that $3,000 and then it made the rest happen.
I had nothing. I was eating ramen noodles every day. I was working at this bakery that supplied all the Krogers in the area. Yeah. And I got a job at FedEx and then I got a job at UPS. And I picked those two in particular because, much like the restaurant industry, they don't care who's working as long as somebody's working. So you could switch your shift with people very easily. That's why a lot of people work in restaurants on the come up, because if I'm in the restaurant and we working and we work different shifts and I need you to take my shift because I got to go to the studio, all I got to do is call you. I don't got to check in with my boss. My boss doesn't care who's there. They just care that somebody's there to cover the tables. Right. And so it's FedEx and UPS at the time had the same culture where they didn't care when you worked. They just wanted somebody to cover your shift. So it's easy to maneuver in those kind of spaces. And so that's what I did. And I ate ramen noodles. I lived way below my means. I was, I was grinding. And again, I was in that mode of survival. Like, you gotta kill what you eat. And you gotta, so it was survival mode. It was, I ain't got no comforts. I ain't got nobody to rely on for this and rely on for that. So that developed a certain grit and again, so that's the first thing I'll stress is do not go back home. The second thing is, like I said before, make sure that your focus isn't money. Your focus has to be, how do I get better at this? You will never make any money if you're not good at your craft. When in anything creative, any entertainment industry, music, film, acting, singing, anything creative, you won't make any money if you're not good, period. So you have to focus on being better. So let me give you a practical example of that. I had a young lady one time came to me and said, hey, my goal is to work for Diddy, right? Okay. She wanted to work for Diddy. And then there was an opportunity with a mutual friend of ours that said, hey, if you move out to LA, I can get you a job working for Diddy. And she also had an opportunity. I said it wrong. Okay. Then the opportunity fell through, but we still knew the person. So she reached out to the person, was like, hey, maybe I'll come to LA and see if something else comes up with Diddy. in the meantime, da da da. She was like, yeah, that's not a bad idea if you have it, da da da. And she had an opportunity in Nashville to go work in a studio and get paid for work in a studio.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, I don't want to take that opportunity because it takes me away from where I want to be. I really want to go work for Diddy. I said, that's the wrong mentality, and here's why. What you should do, take the opportunity in front of you.
Okay.
The opportunity gives you the chance to become better. Because what you don't want is to get in front of Diddy and you ain't good enough. You so focused on where you want to be and not focused on what you want to be. So take the opportunity in Nashville, get better. If it sucks, you can, because then I get all the, well, I don't like country music, and what if it sucks, and what if Nashville sucks, and da da da. And that's what people do. They talk themselves out of their dreams every time. And so my thing is, if it sucks, then you make a decision, but you got to give it the chance. Take the opportunity. Young people, and I say that because I just turned 50, so I'm calling all y'all young people. Young people have this thing where they feel like they only got one shot, and they treat everything like, man, I don't want to mess up my shot. And if we go on with the analogy, it's a shot.
Yeah.
Take a shot. And if you miss, cock the gun back, shoot again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Even the most basic gun got 6 bullets.
And this is America.
So don't feel like you got to shoot one shot. This mentality of
a lot of shots.
I don't want to mess up my shot. Shoot the shot.
Yeah.
And if you miss, shoot again. And if you miss, shoot again. And then if you empty that clip, put a whole nother clip in and shoot again. And then shoot again and shoot again. So that's what I'm like, this mentality that you can mess up your life, you can actually mess up your life more by not even taking the opportunity or trying the thing. Yeah. You may go to Nashville and it may be the best thing ever happened to you. Worst case scenario, you'll learn something and it'll make you better for when you do get in front of Diddy, that you're, what you need to be at the time.
Absolutely.
So I remember, and I could tell you my own personal journey. I remember when Pharrell and Chad first came out, when the Neptunes first came out, I remember saying to myself, man, I want to mix for them one day. That'd be great. Never chased a client. I never went to anybody and asked them to mix a record. And fast forward, some years went by, and I've always thought of Pharrell and Chad, and Pharrell in particular, and be like, it'd be dope to mix records for them. I love their sound. I love their style. And then they broke up, and it was just Pharrell producing for a little while. And then I got a call. And this is years later after I've heard they sound. And Karen Veazey, she used to work for Pharrell. She said, your name is on a short list of people that Pharrell wanted to try out, because every time he goes to the club, he hears a record that you mixed. And he goes, who mixed that record? And they go, Leslie Brathwaite. And he goes, man, I want to try this cat. Yeah. So first project I mixed for Pharrell was a young lady named Leah LaBelle, who was signed to him and Jermaine Dupri. She passed away in a car accident with Rasul Butler. They were dating. They both died in a car accident. Oh. So I mixed her project. And the very next thing I mixed for Pharrell was Happy. So what I'm saying to you is, had I been more assertive about finding Pharrell when I first heard about him and me trying to go work with him, maybe I wouldn't have been ready. Right. Maybe I wouldn't have had the chops and the skills to impress him. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. But I came into the situation when he came looking for me with leverage, because I'd mixed a lot of records over the years that he had heard. And so he was like, who is this cat? I want him to mix my stuff. And then I end up mixing one of the biggest records of my career, Happy. So what I'm saying is, I spent the time getting better and working on my craft instead of chasing off to what I thought I wanted at the time. Yeah, I wanted to work with Pharrell, but I knew the universe will work that out. God will work that out if I'm supposed to. I ain't got to worry about it. You see what I'm saying?
I love that, man. That's like the old proverb or something is like, spend that time sharpening the axe versus, cutting down the tree. The more time you spend sharpening that axe, the easier that tree will be to knock down.
When the trees come along, I'm good. I'm just swinging once.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. I was so focused on being better and being good and being better. I didn't have these targets in mind. I didn't have these things in mind. I just wanted to be better. Yeah. So that's the thing I always tell people is, the valuable thing is focus on being better. The money will come. Absolutely.
That's dope, man. So far from our conversation, it feels like you're heavy on the relationships that you've made with people who have taken you a long way. You know, I love how you remember everybody's names, and you build like more than working relationships with the people that you do business with in this industry, which I think is a key that often gets overlooked sometimes. You know, but like, what other kind of principles or kind of guidance kind of leads you as an audio engineer in the big picture? Like, what does it mean for you to mix a song, you know, on many levels?
I think just in general, what leads me and guides me is God. So
okay,
whatever that means to you as a person, wherever your spirituality is, if you don't have spirituality or whatever it is you align with on a level bigger than yourself, even the most atheistic of atheist person will somehow discover that they align with something bigger than themselves. So for me, it just happens to be God. That guides me. And what I mean by that is when you understand certain principles of how you navigate, how you do business, how you treat people, how you do anything, it's always about what are the things that transcend whatever specific thing. So for instance, I would handle business the way I would, you know, handle something with my wife, or the way I treat my kids is the same way I would treat somebody else's kids or somebody as an artist. Or if I'm working with a child artist, I would respect that relationship the same way I'd want somebody to respect my kids, or, you know, do unto others as you have them do unto you. Or and then I just have certain basic guiding principles that I navigate with just in general as a man. So I have famously at Full Sail, you know, I'm a married man. I don't meet with female students one-on-one behind closed doors. If you ever see me meeting with a female student, it is outside on campus where everybody can see me. And that's just because I want to establish who I am as a person. So one thing I know for a fact is nobody can ever say anything crazy about me when it comes to cheating or being a man who's flirting with other women. And my wife ain't never got to worry about that just because of how I carry myself. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's certain principles I know how to navigate where it don't even, before anything audio, who you are as a person, you have to move a certain way. And there's certain things I don't care how much money is involved. You can't talk to me a certain way. It just ain't gonna work. Yeah, so I have certain principles. I don't care what part of my career I'm in. Jeezy, I have a famous story about Jeezy, where very early in our relationship, I had to let him know, I get it. You are from the streets and you got all these guns and da-da-da. And I ain't never even so much pointed a gun at somebody in my lifetime. But what you're not going to do is talk to me like I'm not a man. I'm a man and you're a man, and you're not going to talk to me like that. And if you feel like you have to talk to me like that, we can't work together. Yeah. And that conversation was the defining moment he understood. He apologized. And then, you know, a few Jeezy hits later, we good. But, you know, and not to say that my mixing is what made them hits. He would have had them hits with somebody else. Yeah. But I was not going to let anybody talk to me that kind of way. And I just wasn't cool with, you know, so it's about who you are as a person. Those principles have to bleed into everything you do. And then people will respect you, and people will know. People don't even invite me to parties because they know I don't drink, I don't smoke. And again, I'm not judging anybody. I'd be around all of it. I've been around cocaine, people having sex in the booth, people smoking, drinking. I'm just not fazed by that. I'm one of them people who that ain't what I'm on, and that's cool. And I can be around it and not be influenced by it. And so people, when you carry yourself a certain way, people don't even want to do stupid stuff around me no more. They don't want to invite me out. Nobody invites me to any industry functions because I know I ain't coming.
Well, you invited to Mix Nick. Let's just put that on the record.
Well, that's a different. That's not a function. That's a thing. I'm talking about like parties and, you know, when you see people having their release parties and all that. And I ain't going to none of that. Like, they know that because I don't drink and I don't smoke. And ironically, I don't like loud music other than when I'm mixing. So that's the thing. They know who I am as a person. When you walk in my room, even at the studio, I have a big TV screen at the studio, and I would just have a rotating set of pictures of my family up there. So everybody who walks in that studio knows, oh, he's a family man.
They get the vibe right away. Yeah.
When them groupies walk in there, when they're with whoever they with, I'm not flirting with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I got all the toys and tools. I remember I used to be a patchwork, and I remember one time I had my keys on the counter, and this chick walked in there. She was with another producer. She was like one of the friends. And she goes, "Ooh, who driving the Ferrari?" And I was like, I looked at my keys and I was like, "Oh man, here we go." But again, that ain't me. And by the end of the night, she was clear. I'm married. I ain't got nothing for you. I'm not even fazed by that. So it's how you carry yourself is then going to determine your respect level. Because if people feel like you're fazed by a certain thing, then that's the thing they use to either hook you or get you to do this or get you to do that or compromise. And I'm just not, so how you move as a person is absolutely important to how you're going to progress in your career.
Yeah, I know that's
and
important.
That goes for men, that goes for women. I've seen girls come on the scene, and I always tell them, look, how you carry yourself, do you. But I'm gonna tell you right now, you start sleeping with everybody around here, they're not gonna respect you. And it goes the same for men too. It's not a one-way street. You know what I mean? People gonna only have the amount of respect for you that you have for yourself. It can't work any other way. So
absolutely. Yo, definitely some gems already, man. We kicking off this heavy conversation. We ain't even talked about a single plugin yet, man. But we learning much more than that from you today. I definitely appreciate you opening up like this, man. Because we need this kind of guidance. We need this in the community because this is stuff that we don't talk about. That y'all learn the engineering, but it's a lot of times the soft skills, the people skills, the things like that. I love that fact that you got your family up on the screen and the rotating picture, man, just to let people know as soon as they walk in, like, this the type of time I'm on, this the vibe, and then people treat you accordingly, man. So yeah, that's heavy. Let's kind of talk a little bit technical right now. So I know that you are like 100% in the box when you mix. So tell me a little bit about that transition. Like, at what point? Because at some point in your career, you was recording the tape, and now you at 100% in the box. So how did we get from there to here?
So the thing about me, I'm one of those early adapters. I'm one of those. I have accepted early in my life that nothing moves backwards. And whenever you hear people saying, "Oh, we got to get back to real music and we got to get back to this," nothing moves backwards. Yeah. And the sooner you figure that out, the better off you will be. Nothing moves backwards. Things move in cycles. And you do have times when you see a certain time period emulating another time period or X, Y, and Z, but nothing moves backwards. So when you understand that about technology, and how when you're in an industry where technology is everything about your industry, you have to be a forward thinker in order to survive. I'm 50 years old and I mix Lil Uzi Vert. The reason that is because I have a certain mentality. I understand how to keep up with the times. I keep my morals and my principles. Even musically, I know what's supposed to hit, what's supposed to slap, what's supposed to feel a certain way. But I also respect the fact that there are things about the younger generations that I don't identify with. All the rappers nowadays, to me, be on top of the beat. They be super in front of the beat, and they don't be in the pocket, and they don't be on time. But that's their thing, and that's cool, and I respect it, but I'm going to make you sound good. And so it's understanding that mentality of, you can still be rooted in what you're rooted in, but you have to be willing to learn the new, adapt to the new way of doing things. I'm not one of those long-lived analog guys. Tape was horrible. I mean, it took forever to fly a hook. It sounds airy. It sounds ridiculous. Technology is amazing. Digital is amazing. Everybody hated digital sound when it first came out. And I was like, yeah, because there were limitations and things had to catch up. But now with UAD, Waves, all these great plugin companies that make amazing sounding plugins that sound better than the original equipment, because now you don't have to deal with the noise and the hiss and the hum and the ground loops and all the stuff you have to deal with real equipment. And some people argue, oh, that's the magic of it. No, I don't like none of that. I don't miss none of that. Something that like back in the day on tape, it would take about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes to fly a hook. Now it takes 10 seconds. Are you kidding me? I don't never want to go back to tape. It's amazing to be able to do things efficiently, quickly, sound great, hit great. And like I said, things get better. When people first start seeing special effects in movies, like the very first Superman movies with Christopher Reeves, those effects look terrible because it was a new technology and they were just figuring it out. But look at a Marvel movie. These movies look incredible. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Because the technology caught up. So it was about really understanding that the technology will catch up and things are going to, in my opinion, things sound good and better than analog. So I'm not one of the long-lived analog. I couldn't wait to get away from analog. I'm like, next new thing. Whatever we doing, I'm doing it. And even with the new conversation of AI and how people are scared, the thing about human beings is we're always scared of something new.
Yeah.
And something we don't understand. And I thought one of the most brilliant things I saw the other day, and I can't remember who the artist was. Maybe y'all be able to help me. It might have been Billie Eilish, but I can't remember who the artist was. But what they said was, hey, if you take my voice in AI and make a song, I'll split it with you. I'll split the publishing with you. I can't remember who it was. It was some artist that said that recently. And that's forward thinking. That's understanding that whether you like it or not, AI is here. It ain't going nowhere. So you could say you hate it. You could say how it's going to ruin the world and the robots are going to take over, and none of that's going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to figure out how this thing can be an active tool in our lives. I actually had Chat GPT write something for me the other day, and I was like, this is brilliant. Are you kidding me? I'm never getting rid of AI.
Ever.
This is amazing. Like, are you kidding me?
I'm heavy on Chat GPT, man. Look.
What?
No cap.
Bro, like Chat GPT is life. So again, but my point is everybody's scared of it. And everybody's like, what you think of AI? It's getting out of control. And you can take an artist's voice and make a song. Okay. That's the reality of it. We can either fight it or figure out how it can be useful. This artist said, okay, take my voice, make a song. Let's split the publishing. Let's go. Because she realized, I can't remember who it was. I think, was it Billie Eilish? I'll look it up. But
somebody in the chat said Grimes. I'm not.
It was Grimes. It was Grimes. It was Grimes. Yes, it was her. I figured it was one of those type artists. But yes, she said that, and she was like, look, this, because that's somebody who's forward thinking. I used to always say, I remember Dallas Austin could tell you this. When Napster first came out and LimeWire and these kids, that kid Sean Fanning, who started Napster, I kept saying in the 90s, I was saying this, the record label should stop hating on this kid and trying to get this kid arrested. Yeah. One of y'all should fucking hire him. Exactly. This man just came up with the most genius platform of sharing MP3s. It is the way we listen to music. It's going to be the future of how we listen to music. If y'all don't get off y'all high horses and hire this kid, he should have had a job instead of being in court defending himself, because he came up with what then became the most innovative thing. And then all of a sudden, now we got iTunes. They should have been hired that kid. Yeah. So my point is, people are always scared of technology, but they need to really get into it and see how it can fit into your lives. Is it scary? Of course. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also very useful. And every phase of life where I've seen brand new technology introduced, I remember when I was a kid and microwaves first came out, and my grandma used to be like, I'm not putting my food in that. And I'm like, Grandma, really? Okay, do that. I'm gonna eat this chicken in about 3 minutes. And my grandma used to be like, I'm not your credit card, and that they have all your information, and I'm going to the bank. Yeah. But people just used to what they used to. And at the end of the day, technology moves us forward.
Yeah, and with every advancement, though, there will be some casualties. Like
absolutely,
it's inevitable that there will be some. But the best thing,
because when digital first came out and people were mixing in the box, it sounded a little thin. Yeah, it wasn't as hitting as analog. But then we figured it out, and now it's hitting, and now it's bumping. And I have records. I had a guy interviewing me one time. This is a while back, and he could not believe that I mixed Cardi B in the box. He kept saying, no, bro, you had to run it through some kind of summing bus, or it had to hit some kind of analog. I was like, no, it literally lived in the session, printed it in the set. I didn't print through any external nothing. Yeah. But technology allows us to make shit bang now. Like we can make it hit.
And then later today too, everybody make sure y'all stick around because Leslie gonna show us some inside look at a upcoming project that he working on. We're gonna get to take a look at the session and kind of get a little snoop around there. But
can I spoil it for him and tell him who it is?
Go, please do.
So I'm mixing this new Cardi B record. Now you're not gonna get to hear the record.
Yeah.
Because then I would be violating all kind of, NDAs and feelings and whatnot. But I am going to show you the session and show you what I'm doing to her vocal and all that good stuff. So brand new record.
Yeah, and this is like literally this is the future, right? So we ain't getting what yesterday sounded like. We about to see what the future is going to sound like.
This is probably more likely going to be her single.
Nice.
I can confidently say that because it's jamming. And then there's a featured artist on there who I'm not allowed to say who it is.
Okay.
But trust me, y'all gonna be excited.
Roger that. It ain't on the clip name or nothing that we gonna see that gets it exposed.
I hope not.
All right, I just want to throw that out there. I don't want you to blame me. Look, make sure it ain't on the clip name or the track name or nothing.
Let me see. Nope, I don't think it is.
All right, bet. Cool.
I can drop hints, but I can't say the person's name. But
okay,
I might drop a hint or two, but
that'll work. It must be HOF. No. That was me just guessing. I don't know. We didn't talk about this.
It's not him.
All right. So what do you think is the next piece of gear to go? You know what I'm saying? We've seen the tape machine go. We've seen a bunch of other analog gear kind of go or be phased out. What's in your idea? Is there anything that's like on the edge that we using every day that's like it could see a way out of here soon?
I think what you're gonna you've seen it already, and you're starting to see it more. And I think it's gonna be more prevalent. Is you're gonna see the complete phasing out of large format studios. Mixing at home. This room is in my home, by the way. So mixing at home in makeshift rooms, smaller speakers. Sometimes even I've done full mixes on headphones. This is gonna be what you see now because our mindsets. Our consumption, everything is changing. So large format, expensive studios with big old speakers, and that's going to be a thing of the past in a minute. It looks great and it looks fancy, but it's really not practical. Like in this room, in this very room, sitting in this very chair is where I mixed What's Poppin', a lot of other Jack Harlow records, some Cardi B stuff. WAP I actually mixed in my truck during the pandemic. True story. But I also finished it in this room. So it's becoming less about the environment and more about the tools. The tools have become so efficient that they make up for the things we used to have to make up for an environment. So it really comes down to laptops, your speakers, your headphones, and all of the tools available to us, whether it's plugins or stuff like that. But you're going to see the extinction of the large format studio.
Okay.
I think that's going away.
I can see that for sure. We definitely have been saying that. And one thing that I kind of see going, and kind of minimizing, especially for beginners and kind of home studio users, would be the interface.
Yeah.
I think the interface is going to see a sharp decline in the future.
Yeah.
True
story.
Yeah.
Because it's only going to be a matter of time before Apple gets to a place where they're like, oh, let's really pump up the technology on the interface side and make it to where what's coming out of what's going into the headphones is pro level quality sound. It has the conversion of the D to A built into the computer, and then we're good to go. Yeah.
You get your nice USB mic and carry on.
Yeah, it's less about the actual tools these days and more about your skills.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, now I know that you're able to kind of work on any tools, so you were in Miami to mix the Cardi B project, right? And you were in London mixing with Beyonce, right? How can you go from studio to studio and get a consistent sound like in your mixing? Because the room that we in, we learn. I know this room, I know these speakers. How can you be all over the world in these different places and still do what you do?
Well, because I tuned my mind and my ear to be less about the environment and more about what's coming out of the speakers. So as long as I have a couple key pieces where, like I said, the laptop is really the brain of the whole operation now. So I take my laptop with me, I take my Apollo with me, and then if in the case of Miami, I actually took my focals with me, the twin 6Bs that I use. I took those with me because I just drove down there. In the case of London, I just called ahead and made sure they had some there for me.
Okay.
Because as long as I'm working on familiar enough equipment, the environment doesn't matter. I can adjust to the environment. The equipment is harder to adjust to. So if I was in London working on speakers I'd never worked on before, that adjustment period would have been a lot longer. As long as I got something I can trust that I know how they're supposed to sound, then the environment doesn't matter as much. I can now adjust to what I'm hearing externally because all I'm really trying to focus on, the whole goal in any environment is to tame the environment to where I'm really just hearing what's coming out of the speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So if I meet that goal, then I'm not even worried about where I am.
Yeah.
You know, I've mixed in hotel rooms, I've mixed on a cruise ship, I've mixed all in all different kind of environments just based on the fact that I had the equipment I needed. In certain other environments, like on a cruise ship, I didn't have speakers, but I had headphones. I used the Audi's, the LCDXs, and I like those, and they're good enough for me to reference so I know where I'm at and I can mix.
Okay.
So it's really about making sure you have consistent equipment. The environment doesn't play as much of a factor.
Okay, nice. So like you travel with your well-known.
Got to make sure you got the laptop, and anywhere I'm going, I got to make sure they have the focals.
Okay. So so when you go to a different studio, you're not like pulling up. You're not working off their computer. You're working off your laptop with your plugins that you like to use.
That's also more practical for security reasons too. Because if I'm mixing Beyonce and Cardi B, I don't want to put that on somebody else's computer to work on. That got to stay on my laptop. Absolutely. That way I know it ain't leaving my laptop. My work, and Rihanna, I got all kind of shit on my laptop that I can't put on somebody else's computer. Hell no.
Exactly.
That'll be a nightmare.
And expect them to delete it. Yeah, I'm gonna delete this.
And the laptop stays with me at all times. There's two things that when I'm out of town, the two things that never leave my side, and when I say never, my wife could tell you, my laptop and my hard drives, they never leave my side. When we go out to eat, I got a backpack with my laptop and my hard drives in it.
Wow.
When we go anywhere,
you on the beach with the backpack and the laptop.
Never leave my side.
Yeah.
They never leave my side.
And that's important, man, because especially like people, they target people in our industry, you know what I mean? And to take our stuff. I know DJ Chose just posted on Instagram the other day, somebody in Houston had took his laptop from him, and that ended up being a thing. So
never leave my side. The only time you would see me without my laptop or my hard drives is if for instance, we just went on a cruise that I was telling you for my birthday, and on Virgin Voyages the rooms have pretty big safes, so I'll put it in a safe in the room.
Okay.
A hotel that has a safe, if my laptop can fit, I'll put it in there. Most hotel safes, your laptop can fit in there. A 16-inch Mac can fit in there. Mm-hmm. Some of them are a touch smaller, but most of them I've never had a problem leaving the laptop in a safe with my drives. So the only thing in our safe, it don't be my wife's jewelry, it don't be passports, it literally just be my laptop and some hard drives.
Yes, indeed. That's the
sometimes
most important
I put my wife's stuff in there, but
Yeah, I feel that. Look, I feel the jury, I'm sure, the stuff like that can be replaced, like the intellectual property you could never get back, Yeah,
my hard drive probably more so than anything always travels with me. That's usually, I always keep it in my pocket. So.
Right on. What brand of hard drive do you use?
This guy, I was just about to show you. So I'm using this guy right here.
Okay, that's the
Samsung T7. Hold on, can you see the name?
No, but I know that's the Samsung. There you go.
Samsung T7. So this is the one that usually stays at home. The ones that I travel with are the rugged versions that are made for more higher impact. They just got a softer, like a little protective case around them. And because there's no moving parts, it's a solid state drive.
Yeah. You
can drop this thing down a flight of stairs. You can do whatever. They're just impossible to destroy because they don't have any moving parts.
Yeah.
And they can take very high temperatures, low temperatures. They're amazing.
Okay. Nice.
So
Definitely.
I have a little waterproof case that I slip them in. It
Hmm.
locks like this, and I always keep it in my pocket.
Wow. Hey, dedication right
Always.
there.
Yeah.
Dedication.
Yeah.
So I was reading an article that I think it was in The Verge, and in there you were quoted as saying, if you go into a hospital and you have a brain tumor removed, you wouldn't want a general surgeon to do it. You'd want a brain surgeon. And this was in regard to like kind of being a specialist and specializing in something, and how you saw the industry when you were getting into it as people wanted, they'd rather their record be mixed by a mix engineer, not a recording engineer that mix. Do you think
Absolutely.
that that's still like relevant today, or like advice path that people should kind of go on? Like, because
I
everybody
don't
nowadays mixing, mastering, making beats, they doing it all. What you think? Like,
I
is
don't
that?
think it's as prevalent in the minds of some of the artists or some of the people who have to get the work done.
Yeah.
I've never said it to somebody where it didn't make sense. The minute I say it, they go, that makes sense. And what in my experience, whenever I've found people who mix and master, they're usually not great at either.
Uh-huh.
So that's usually the thing. Not saying they're not good. I've met people who mix and master, and they're good mixers and good mastering engineers. I've never met somebody who is great at both.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you think of it, and when you think of it from an artist perspective, the person you want working on your stuff has to be great at it. You're paying a lot of money. Why would you want somebody who's okay mixer and an okay masterer? You're already paying a lot of money for your studio time or X, Y, and Z. And so that's why I use that analogy. Like, because some artists, a lot of artists and producers treat their work like it's their child, it's their babies. And as a human being, if you got a brain tumor, I don't want the general surgeon who also does appendixes and everything else taking out my brain tumor. I want the dude who does brain tumors, who've been doing it for a while. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at that. Again, I've never met anybody who mixes and masters that is great at both.
Mm-hmm.
They usually either lack in one or lack in both of them. Usually the case is they're mediocre at both. But when you focus on one thing and that's your specialty, you're usually pretty damn good at it. And when you think of all the people you would put in the list of great mixers, Manny Marroquin, Greg Wells, whatever list, whoever, Tony Maserati,
Yeah.
all those guys, they mix records. That's what they do. They don't master.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them do, but I mean, I think Jason Joshua mixes and masters. But again, I love him as a mixer. I don't like his masters.
Okay.
In that, I shouldn't say I don't like. I never heard a Jason Joshua master that I loved, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, good point for sure. Thank you for sharing your insight on that. One thing that I always felt.
And wait, let me say this. Don't take that as me and Jason got beef. That's my boy.
I know. I'm definitely chopping that up. I'm definitely going to snip that up and make that the Instagram post that I make tonight.
Please
like
don't.
that.
Please don't.
Leslie Brathwaite says.
Please don't. Please don't. Yeah, because people take that kind of stuff out of context and then they think I'm coming for Jason. I'm like, no, that's my boy. He does great work. He's an amazing mixer. But I've never heard a master that he's done and go, oh, Jason killed that master. So I'm just making the point, but I don't want you to take it as I don't like Jason or I don't like his work. So, I had to clear that up because that can be taken that way.
Understood. Yeah. I mean, I feel what you're saying is kind of like the specialist is the specialist for the reason. And when you put it in that analogy of having the brain surgeon, work on your brain tumor, like you wouldn't want anybody else in the job, it really makes a lot of sense,
And that's what I would say about myself. Like people have asked me all the time, hey man, you mix and master? I'm like, no, I just mix. I understand mastering that. And I've had people beg me to master their records. I'm like, no, that's not something I'm interested in putting my name on because I don't feel the same way about my mastering that I would about my mixing. So no.
Yeah. So do you have master engineer that you specifically push to like most of your stuff that you feel like you had a best working relationship with?
Yeah, it's either going to be Colin Leonard. It's going to be Colin Leonard is here in Atlanta. He probably masters 90% of the records I mix. It's going to be, he's mastered all the Beyonce stuff I've mixed, Cardi B, Rihanna, whoever, you name it. He's Uzi Vert, Jack Harlow.
Okay.
He's mastered all of the top stuff I mix. Before I knew Colin, I used to get Chris Athens to master most of my stuff, and Chris is still a friend. And ironically, I think Colin learned from Chris, but they're both still in. I mean, it's like splitting hairs at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times Colin and I just developed a relationship of the timing, because Chris is usually super busy. He's swamped. Chris masters like Drake and all that kind of stuff, so he's always swamped.
Yeah.
So Colin and I grew into a relationship where I could send Colin a record right now to master. He'd have it back to me in like 20 minutes. And so that became his calling card, and he's good. So him and Chris Athens, Colin Leonard, Chris Athens, those are my two like go-to guys. And again, the only difference between them would be splitting hairs. They're both great and efficient and dope mastering engineers. I like Dave Kutch. There's a couple guys that I like, but those two end up being my go-tos, and it's usually Colin.
Yeah. So you definitely recommend that mixing engineers find and cultivate relationship with a mastering engineer, you know, on some stretch of the pain.
Yeah, and they can help you out too. I'll tell you something that I think it was Chris who helped me out on this a while back. So I was at Patchwork Studios at the time, and they have these Quested monitors that I mixed on. And the Quested had 4 woofers in each. So each speaker had 4 woofers, and then they had the cones in the middle. Well, one of the woofers on one of the speakers was blown, and I didn't know it. I had no way of knowing it. So I'm mixing, and I'm compensating for that blown speaker by adding more bass to the mix so that it can sound right to me. But on print and on copy, it was wrong. I was adding way too much bass. Yeah. Well, because Chris had mastered so many of my records, he immediately caught it. When I sent him a mix, and he goes, "Hey man, check your speakers. Your mix came in real low end heavy, and that's not like you. Check your speakers. You might have a blown speaker." And sure enough, he was right. So when you have that relationship with somebody who knows your work, they know exactly what you're used to sending them. The minute your work sounds off, he'll know it. Yeah. He'll be able to pick it up and be like, "Wait, your mix sounds way too heavy on the low end, and you usually don't do that. That sounds like you were compensating. That sounds like you had a blown." He knew exactly what to diagnose. Yeah. So that it's absolutely beneficial to have somebody that you work with a lot that can give you that instant feedback. Okay. That way I didn't have to wait till I got to an A&R or a label person to be like, Leslie, this mix is a little bass heavy. Right. And then I would have had to check it in the car and be like, he's right. I wonder what happened. Then I'd have to do, Chris helped me out right away.
Yeah. So in that point too, it's just also good to have another keen set of ears that can be objective to what you listening to what they're listening to, and instead of yourself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
You listen to something.
And that's the thing about this. You always have to have a collaborative mentality. Yeah. You always have to be willing to take feedback. That's another built-in thing about what we do. Any creative person, whether you're artist, producer, engineer, learn how to take feedback, learn how to take criticism, learn how to be criticized. Your skin got to be thick. You can't take it personal when somebody say they don't like something, they want you to change something ain't sounding right. That's part of what we do. And it's such a valuable part of what we do, is to be collaborative minded, to learn how to take feedback from anybody. I don't care how I got, more Grammys than most people I'm around, and I will still take criticism from whoever, and I would still take constructive criticism. It's not about what you've accomplished and, I'm better at mixing than. No, if you hear something, tell me. I want to know, because the collaborative spirit and the collaborative ears is what makes things better.
So what do you like more? Because you are in your home studio and you do a lot of work from there. Do you like to kind of work with clients in the studio with you during mixing?
Hell no.
You like to be alone more?
Hell no. So yeah. So let me go ahead and just refute everything I just said. No, I'm just kidding. So here's the thing. I have a collaborative spirit. I like input. I like all of that. But I like input from afar. Yeah. You can just tell me. You can just call me. You ain't got to come in my house. Yeah. You could technology. Use the phone. Just call me and be like, "Hey, can you turn up the hi-hat?" Great. But you ain't got to come here to tell me that. Yeah. So here's the thing. The thing about clients and coming to the studio, I absolutely hate it for a couple of reasons. Clients usually only want to be in the studio because they want to keep playing the song over and over again on loudspeakers. They want to go on their Instagram live and show that they're in the studio, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
It just becomes a very non-productive situation. I don't like how weed smells. So the minute they come in the studio, even if they don't smoke in the studio, because I don't allow it in any studio I work in, they still smell like weed, or they still smell like alcohol, or you know what I mean? So there's nothing, let me tell you, absolutely nothing about a client in person that I like. I just don't like nothing about it. I love them, but I don't like them in person because I'm just like, this is not helping my process. I love being in a room by myself. I'm an introvert. So I like being in a room by myself, me and the computer, me and Pro Tools, and working on the song, and then everybody give me their input from wherever they're at. Now, here's the other thing. The other thing is it's a lot more productive because, and this is my selling point, how I get them not to come to the studio. So take notes. If you don't want people to come to the studio,
here we go.
I'm about to hook y'all up with a nice little tip. Y'all ready? Okay, take notes. Here's the thing. What I always say is, if you come to my studio and listen to the mix, well, you're not used to my speakers. So you're not really getting a good sense of how this mix is really being presented. Mm-hmm. But where do you listen to music most? And they usually say in my car or at my home studio, That's where you should judge my mix. And I'm being honest, but it also works out in my favor. That's where you should judge the mix because those are the speakers you're used to. So you're going to hear exactly what you need to hear on the speakers you're most used to listening to stuff on. Right. So stay home. And listen at home.
You
and
can listen as loud or as high as you want to.
And then they go, that makes sense. So it's like, once I figured that, I used that a couple of times and it worked, and I was like, that's the ticket. You got to make them, feel like, and it's true, but it is beneficial to them to listen on a system that they're used to. I'm not lying. Yeah. It just turns out to also work out in my favor because I don't be wanting people I'm certainly not going to let nobody come to my house. That's the other added advantage of working from home. If before COVID, if you would have asked me, can I work from home? I'd have been like, hell no. Because in my mind, I would have said, oh, my kid's going to be talking to me all the time. My wife's going to want me to do the honey-do list because the honey-do list was popping before COVID. I had all kind of shit I hadn't done around the house before COVID. Yeah. And then when COVID hit, I had to start knocking off the honey-do list because I had nothing else to do. So I would have told you, I can't work from home. What turns out, what COVID taught me is I actually can work from home. I actually like working from home better, and I'm a lot more efficient working from home. And here's why. At the studio, everybody speaks my language. So I can have 50 conversations about a kick drum, a sample, a dope sounding speaker, a microphone. Yeah. Here at home, nobody speaks my language. My daughters don't care two shits about what I do. My wife don't know what. If you ask my wife what is Pro Tools, as much as I've explained it to her, she'll be like, babe, it's just the thing on the computer. I don't know. So my point is, I don't have a lot of distracting conversations at home. In the studio, I could talk all day about this. You know how we could nerd out all day about the new plugin that came out yesterday. You know what I mean? Yeah. At home, that conversation doesn't exist. So I get through my work a lot quicker at home. Also, being at home, it forces me to be on a schedule because my daughters are in school all day. So that's when I know I can make all the loud stuff. I can crank it up and mix and da-da-da. And then when they come home, I take a break, homework, hanging out, da-da-da. They go to sleep. I'm back in the studio, but I'm doing all the quiet work now because they're sleeping. So I'm doing the printing mixes, clean versions, sending mixes off, stuff like that at night after their sleep. So it puts me in a schedule. Yeah. Whereas before, I would take 3 days to do something because I'm running my mouth all day. Yeah. You know what I mean? So working from home actually became super cool. And I get more time with my family and I get to see them more often. And it's just all kind of benefits to working at home. Yeah. So with that, I absolutely, it became one of the best excuses too, because then I could just be like, nah, you can't come to my house to listen to the mix. Hell no. Yeah. So that's an added excuse. But So I typically don't like the clients to come listen to the mix. And of course, there are a few exceptions. Queen B, Beyonce gets whatever she wants. If she wants to come to my house, she can come to my house.
Has she been to your house?
Not this house, but she has been to one of my homes before. When we were mixing.
That's fly.
And Cardi's been here.
Okay.
And Uzi's been here, and who else? So Jack Harlow.
Okay.
So, the heavyweights, they get a pass. They're usually quick. They usually just come in to drop off a drive, or just want to say hi, or just want to vibe for a minute, or X, Y, and Z. But just the typical artist, no, hell no, can't come to my house.
Right, understood. I get that, man. Yeah. So one thing that I want to talk about, and this is definitely switching gears a little bit. One thing that kind of like made me want to get off into YouTube and doing these tutorials that I do online is that I never saw the representation, much coming up in the industry of, young black men like doing this, or women either. There's definitely wasn't a lot of representation of women. And that was just never a thing, like all the engineers that I looked up to were older white men. Even once I was on YouTube and I was diving into it, like I learned a lot from Dave Pensado, and really like my whole style has been modeled off In the Layer, right? And for the most part, and so like I want to know, like, as you coming up in the game, especially like in the 90s, right, and that kind of more earlier time frame, have you ever dealt with any like racism or hardships being a black man and being a mix engineer?
What's interesting? What I tell people all the time is I have found the least amount of racism in my life in the music industry and in the creative industries in general. Not to say there isn't any, but what you also got to remember is my experience dictates that, in a sense of I'm in Atlanta. I'm predominantly in black music. Anybody who grew up in the hip hop era, I'm a hip hop head, literally born the same year as hip hop. And so what happens is hip hop drives every culture today. Every form of popular music is driven by hip hop. And so what you have is in the 90s, it was prevalent to where you're working on hip hop or some type of black music. So it was actually cool for a producer to see a black engineer. They wanted that. They wanted to see that. And it's the same thing I tell women all the time, young female engineers, I always tell them, like, look, don't look at that as some kind. I remember one time I got so aggravated when this young lady asked me this question. She said, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm a black woman. And I said, stop. I said, stop right there. Mm-hmm. You are not at a disadvantage. You actually have a superpower.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Because you're a woman, because you're black, you automatically have all eyes on you. What you do with that now becomes a thing. So we've all heard it as minorities. Yeah. We got to work twice as hard to get half as much. And that is just our reality in this nation. Mm-hmm. We got to work twice as hard. So I'm just telling you, as a young lady and as a young black lady, bust your ass, be good. Because when they see you, they're going to see you. Yeah. You actually have a superpower. You actually stand out. The number one question I always get is, man, how do I stand out? People ask me that all the time. How do I stand out to get that job? Well, you have an advantage, ma'am. You're black and a woman. You automatically standing out. Yeah. Just go be good. Go be good now. And so that's the thing. I looked at that as in 1992, when I came into the industry, I didn't have to worry about standing out. I just had to worry about being good. I was already standing out. You walk into a room and see a young black engineer sitting behind the board, I'm standing out. I'm the standout.
Yeah.
They don't see that often. Now I just got to be good. Because what I don't want to do is stand out and be whack. So I was so focused that, again, back to the point of work on being great. Work on being good at your craft, great at your craft, better at your craft. Because we already everybody in this Zoom, we standing out already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In that space, we standing out. Mm-hmm. So that's the that was a key thing, is understanding that. But again, it never really worked as a racist thing, even from the white engineers, it was always love, and it was always, people were genuinely, and what you find in creative industries is the creativity and the love of music supersedes any bullshit. So
Yeah.
people are just genuinely happy that you speak the language they speak. It's like your tribe isn't about if they look like you. Your tribe is about, damn, do you relate, man? Do you hear that kick and snare? Do you hear how that song makes you feel? That's our tribe. Like, I don't care, what color you are.
Yeah.
Is it, do you feel what I'm feeling? Do you feel me? That's our tribe. So that language is different in the creative space, especially in music and in the creative space.
Word up, man.
Fortunately, haven't had too much of a rub on that. I have had some, but nothing. I've had those moments where, early in my career, somebody walk in the room and go, I'll be sitting at the board and it goes, "Oh, where's the engineer?" And I'll be like,
Yeah.
But that's something sometimes that you have to chalk up to. That person may not just be may not be racist.
Right.
The person is just going off of what they see.
Exactly.
They just have never seen that before, and that's kind of jarring to them. And their first instinct is to think, "Oh, you know what I mean?"
Yeah.
It's no different from if my wife tells me, "Hey, babe, I got a lady coming over to do my nails," and then somebody rings my doorbell and it's an Asian lady. My mind is going to assume that she's the lady my wife was talking about. Right. That's not the best way to approach that. But unfortunately, that's what my mind is going to do. Mm-hmm. If my wife say, "Hey, this lady's coming over to do my nails," and then the doorbell ring and I open the door and it's an Asian lady, I'm going to say to myself, "Oh, this must be the lady that came to do the nails."
Right.
That ain't, I don't feel like I'm a racist, but that's a bias that's already built into my brain as, oh, if it's an Asian lady, she must be the one here to do the nails.
And that's human to do that. And we have to make associations.
Absolutely.
Otherwise,
is it
we
right?
go crazy.
No, but it's human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for sharing your experience on that. I know it's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about, but I think it's important to at least bring it up.
Absolutely.
And have that discussion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say shout out to the people who, this is something I always say too, and it's specifically to the women in this Zoom. I see a couple of y'all. I see Musically NMC. I see B Girl Music. I see a few of y'all in here.
Yes.
Specifically to y'all, I've always said this, and I've always believed that it burns me up to this day that women don't make the same pay as men in certain spaces, which I can't understand for the life of me why that's even a thing. But the thing is to understand that the burden really isn't on y'all to change the culture. The burden is on us. Mm-hmm. The burden is on the oppressor to change the oppressive culture. So to the men in the room, it's really our responsibility. The burden is on us to do better so that these young women have equal opportunities. The burden isn't on y'all. It's on us to do better. So when I meet people, like I knew Pharrell was in my tribe early, because when I met him, he has this thing where he tries to only hire women. He gives a lot of opportunity to women. If you look at his staff, it's 90% women. So his thing is always, if there's a female engineer, he's on it. "Oh, send her to me. Let me see how she does." And da-da-da. He's always about that. Janet's like that. Beyonce's like that. Beyonce has a band. I think it's all females in her band. And, so everybody's always about empowering the people that have been the most oppressed or the most silenced in a thing. And I love that. So I think it's important for you as women to understand it's not on y'all. Yes, you do what you can to stand up for yourself and da-da-da. But it's really on us. You men in here, it's on us. It's on us to do better, to really champion for our ladies, our sisters, and do better in that department. So it's really on us. And that's, every time I do like stuff at Full, I've bitched about this before, where they like have a, panel about, women in the industry. And on the panel, it's all women. I'm like, no, on a panel about women in the industry, it should be some men. Some of us need to learn something. Some of us need to advocate for the women. It shouldn't be a panel about women in the industry and it's all women. I understand the nature of that is to get the experiences, but if we're trying to do better, men need to be on that panel too. Yeah. No different from if I see, nothing makes me more proud of when I see things like the Black Student Union at Full Sail. Yeah. And it's just as many white people in the Black Student Union as there is Black people. Mm-hmm. And what that tells me is they want to learn, they want to be a part of it. They don't just want, it's not just something for Black people. It's a Black Student Union, but it's about how do we learn from each other. So on a panel about women in the industry, I want to see men on the panel. I don't want to just see women.
That makes sense.
It would be no different if we had a panel about being Black in the industry. Yes, we want Black people on there to talk about our experiences, but we also want white people and Asian people and Mexican people and da-da-da, so we can all understand the experience, not just through the lens of the oppressed. It's incumbent on the oppressor to fix the oppressive conditions. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man.
Sorry, I feel real passionately about that, so I will go on and on about that. Like,
absolutely, forever. That's definitely important topics, and like that's an interesting take on, you know, not just having the women on the women in music panel, but, you know, bringing men on the conversation too, so that we can learn from and, you know, start to understand the women's experiences more, and so that makes a lot of sense to me. Before we move on and take a look at that unreleased super exclusive Cardi B session that you about to dive into, I got just one more question, and then y'all make sure everybody stick around and y'all sharing this live, because after this we're gonna have some Q&A with the Wavy Sills Elite and take some questions from the YouTube live chat, so make sure y'all stick around from that. But we about to get into the exclusive Cardi B session, but my last question that I want to ask you, Mr. Brathwaite himself, LB, can I call you LB? Is that cool?
LB, that's what most people call me.
All right, LB, man. What do you think about you know, the push into immersive audio, and have you started to dive into this yet?
Okay, this is a touchy subject for me. So, as much as I love technology and things moving forward, I absolutely, unequivocally hate Atmos for music. I like Atmos for what it's for, which is immersive audio, video games, film, all that stuff. Sounds amazing. I like it for some genres of music, but music that's predominantly driven by hip hop, and it's about the hit and the slap and the you gotta feel it. Immersive audio just doesn't do it for me. Like, when I hear Atmos mixes of anything hip hop driven or in that zone, it just doesn't sound good to me. Mm-hmm. Will it get better? I am probably certain of it, but still there are certain elements to it that don't move me creatively. I don't want to hear stuff flying around me most of the time, or I don't want to hear certain things placed above me. That's not intuitive to an experience. Yeah. So for me, and again, this may be the part of me that wants, I don't want things to stay the same. That ain't even in my nature. I want things to advance, but with advancement, there has to be some cohesive thing that makes sense. And when I hear it, it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't, for certain types of music, it just sounds crazy to me. So yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with Atmos and with immersive audio in general. Hopefully my love-hate relationship will become way more love and less hate. We'll see. Right now, the love-hate is pretty strong on the hate.
Pretty strong on the hate. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I love it in some aspects, you know, similar to you, but like you say, I feel like it's not all the way there. And I think once more people start making music specifically for Adobe Atmos and immersive formats, then it will make more sense versus trying to, like, what we're doing now is translate.
Let me give you a perfect example too. Yeah. Let me give you a perfect example. Whenever technology advances, I think one of the key components to technology advancement being great is when it requires less of the user. So you heard me rant and rave about how with tape, it took me 45 minutes to fly a hook. And with Pro Tools, it takes 10 seconds. That requires less of my time, may require some skills to learn, but it ultimately costs me less to do it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whenever we saw in history, I'll give you some examples. Whenever we saw something that required more of the consumer, it failed. Perfect example. Remember when 3D TV was a thing? Reason why 3D TV failed is because you had to keep up with 3D glasses. Most people can't even find their damn remotes.
Right.
Much less, I got a family of 2 girls and my wife, and you think we about to keep up with 4 sets of 3D glasses? Epic fail. You're requiring something of your user now. So what I'm saying is, when technology moves forward and requires more of the user, it never works out. The problem with immersive audio, for it to really be good, you have to have 9 point something speakers in your house for you to really. Now, again, if I heard an immersive mix of Uzi on a system that was built for immersive audio, it would sound incredible. Yeah. The problem is it sounds like shit in headphones. Right. Because immersive audio in headphones is still synthesized. It's still giving you the illusion that something is above you. When you're in a room with speakers above you, that's not an illusion. The sound is actually coming from above you. That's a much different experience. So you see, so what I'm saying is, for immersive audio to really sound great and for it to really catch on, in my opinion, it has to require less of the consumer. And right now, the consumer has to invest too much to get the best experience. And I've done this in so many rooms. I've asked a room full of a bunch of people who all listens to their audio with the spatial audio button hit on when you listen to Apple or iTunes or whatever. Nobody does. There's some
definitely
people
I got mine's off. I can't lie. I turned it off because when most of the time I'm moving around, and I hate that feeling of like I turn now the vocals over here.
Let me do a quick catch up on this in this Zoom window. Yeah. Physically raise your hand if you listen to spatial audio when you listen to your AirBuds or AirPod Max. I got one hand. I got Lex. DJ Just 100 said, and nobody else raising their hands. That's my point.
And it's there. So, you don't got to do nothing else but hit a switch.
So it's just, to me, the technology just hasn't gotten there yet, and it requires too much of the user to enjoy the experience. Wow. When things don't require anything of the user or require less of the user, they take off. But the minute it requires more, it's a problem.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world, for real. Thank you for breaking it down like that. I never thought about it like that in my own, but now I got a whole new view on it. So we're gonna see, man. Yeah. All right, y'all ready to see this exclusive, never before seen or heard, and you're not gonna hear it tonight, but you're gonna get to see the future of what mixing is looking like from Mr. LB himself, man. He about to give us a little walkthrough of a session that you want to preview the session, preface it for us.
Yeah, so what you have here is, let me just show y'all what y'all looking at. Can y'all see it? Everybody can see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what you're looking at is typically a setup from me. And I'll walk you through every track, everything, every plugin, however you want to do it. So first off, you'll notice, I had this done for a specific purpose. I was showing somebody something. Usually my sessions don't look like this. They usually look like, all of the tracks are usually the color of the actual track. All the clips in the track are usually the actual color of the track. And I'm going to color code them right now how I usually color code them, so you'll see. So for instance, my tracks are usually always this color, and it's not about the colors, it's about the organizational system. And I'll tell you why it's important. My leads, these are my leads here. And usually my leads are red. And did I do my track color thing? Maybe that's why. So usually my leads are red. And then This looks like her hook. So usually my hook is this color, like a blue or aqua blue, somewhere in there. This is also a lead, and that's also a lead. And I'll usually keep that red as well. So the reason why it's important to organize color code, organization is important for a couple of things. It keeps you from making mistakes. When your stuff is organized, when you know how things look and how things are supposed to look, your brain automatically stays in this realm of not making mistakes. You can make a lot of mistakes when you're not organized. And by mistakes, I mean things like printing the wrong track or not unmuting a track when you're printing the TV, or just all these different things where when you know what the color schemes looks like, it's a lot more pleasing to the eyes, so you can go to things quickly. You could know where, what is what, that kind of thing. So how my sessions typically look are the demo track and the beat or of some sort up here is usually where the stuff they sent. I usually reference that stuff sometimes to hear what they were hearing, to hear what the demo sounded like. The thing I'm always thinking of is what made them fall in love with the song. Let me not try to just deconstruct everything. They had to fall in love with the song from the rough in most cases. So let me listen to the rough. Let me see what it is that they fell in love with. Let me see what it is that sounds crazy. So my typical, and these two tracks, I think, are just different edits of the song to kind of, they probably were different edits that they wanted me to listen to how the edit in this part of the song sounded on the bridge or X, Y, and Z. So then my main aux track is usually called Yep. That's an inside joke between me and T-Boz from TLC. So my main aux track is always called Yep. And so this is where I would monitor the mix through. Usually I'll have the output on 1 and 2, which is sending to my Apollo, which goes to my speakers. The reason why it was selected to bus 127 and 128 is that's what I print through. So from there, it goes to one of the print tracks. My print tracks are always bright green. So these are my print tracks. So I printed the first pass of the mix on this track. The second pass of the mix I printed here. And then, so we got all the way up to mix 4, I believe. And then I printed an empty verse pass because of the feature that's going to be on here. They wanted her to hear it with the verse empty so she can, put her thing in there. So I just gave away a hint. It's a she.
It is a
That's
she.
all you're going to get. That's all you're going to get. So these are the different passes I printed in bright green.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Sure.
Yeah. Why do you prefer to print over bouncing the disc?
I usually like to hear it as it's going down. I think that's just the old school in me that we just did that. We listened as it ran down. Okay. It's just something I like to do as part of my process. There's no technical reason for it. I just like to hear it as it's being printed. I like to know exactly what I'm sending to the client. Awesome. And there's a way, once you listening to it as it's going down, then I don't have to listen to it again. Because if I did bounce to this, I would still have to listen to it before I send it to the client. So might as well listen to it while it's being recorded.
Okay.
So it's just I think it's just the old school in me of that's the way we did it. We printed and listened as it went down.
Makes
sense.
What
I mean? So you know exactly what's getting printed.
And then before you move on, the last question I'm dumbass right now is, what's the one plugin on your Yep track?
There you go. I was getting to that.
Oh, so my bad. I'm jumping the gun.
No, you're good. So lately, so typically I don't put anything on that track. There are times when I do. Sometimes I do it just to send it to the client so they can hear it really beefed up and loud to emulate what they do in mastering. Sometimes I don't. What I've found lately, I kind of learned this plugin during COVID. I was mixing something for David Guetta. We were working on Rita Ora's album, and he sent over a session. And this is how I learn about a lot of new plugins. When people send me sessions with plugins that I don't have, you try to open a session and it says, you don't have this, and this. And I go, okay. And I go buy all of them because I want to learn what is these plugins that I didn't have? What do they do? So instantly, whenever I open a session and it says I don't have a bunch of stuff, I go buy everything that I don't have. And then I learn, how is this person using that plugin? So David Guetta was using this plugin, and he was sending, you know, it's like a mastering processor, and his settings were kind of like this. He had the push, which is basically the compressor. That's what the push is. Volume is what it is. Volume outputting the device. You can add a little bass to the entire mix. You can add a little air, which is high end. The body is usually the mid. The focus button kind of keys you into how well it focuses on the frequencies, or how wide the bell curve is of the frequencies it focuses on. Width usually tends to spread it out in more of a stereo fashion, so you get a wider mix. The analog button I never mess with too much, but I think it just adds a little analog air kind of hiss. The transients help determine how it's going to attack. Like if you got something with a lot of speedy kicks and snares and high-end EDM stuff, you might want to bump the transients up a little bit to kind of catch the reaction of things. But I typically, when I use this plugin, I typically only do a little push, which is the compression, and I do a little volume just to kind of get it really cranking to compete with the other things they may be comparing it to. So that's what a lot of times that's what you're going to have. And I liked it when he had it on his session. I was like, oh, I kind of like this. And I printed with this on, and I backed the overall. When this is on, then I would back the overall fader down like this, maybe like to about 4, just to give it some headroom so that I'm still leaving headroom for the mastering engineer. But I like the sound that this created. I'm not necessarily printing the volume level of what this creates. I just like the sound of the compression. Okay. So I tend to use it every now and then. I use it more often than not now because it just gives it a nice little crunch, gives a nice little cohesion, a little glue to the mix that I like. So that's usually the only plugin you'll ever see on my master fader, if you see one at all. It's the T-Rack S1. And it's made by IK Multimedia is the name of the company that makes the plugin. And I can't remember how much it was. Maybe like $100 or something.
Okay, dope.
So, like when it's just that and then how I have it is all my vocals feed into a main vocal aux that then feed into the main track. All my instruments, which are the brown ones here, feed into a track I like to call tracks, and that feeds to the main track. And then all the vocals feed to like their separate auxes, and then those auxes feed the main vocal thing. And why I always like to create a main vocal aux is because sometimes you may just want to pull all the vocals down just a touch, or you might want to turn all the vocals up just a touch. So I always like to have that overall control over all the vocals based on what they're doing. I typically, so when you move down here to my instruments, I typically don't, sometimes you'll see people who have like drums, guitars, strings, they group the instruments and then they put them to a main aux. Yeah. I typically just put all my instruments to a main aux. What that does for me is it's the way my brain works. If I have a drum aux and a guitar aux and a string aux, I'm going to be playing with them the whole time. I'm going to be like, oh, maybe let me turn the drums up a little bit. Oh, maybe let me turn the strings down a little bit. It's going to give my brain the notion that I should be messing with the relative volumes between those groups. So I don't want to do that. I like to just stay committed to a mix. Let me mix this thing. Let me get it feeling a certain way. And I give myself less options to second guess myself. Because then you'll start going, oh, maybe I should just turn the drums up a little bit. When that's a little harder to do, you don't tend to go into that mind frame. You just mix how you want it to sound. Key side note, people ask me all the time, how do you know when you're finished mixing? For me, when I start second guessing myself too much, when I start asking too many questions, when I start going, should I have turned the kick up? Should I have turned the kick down? Maybe I need to turn this up. Maybe I need to da-da-da. When I start doing that, when it's like 3 or 4 questions in a row, I'm done. The mix is over. Because what I tell people all the time is you can unravel a mix just as much as you mixed it. You can sit there and mess up a song just as much as you mixed it to make it sound good. You got to know when to stop. And you got to know when to walk away. And it's hard because sometimes it's hard to detach from what you're doing, but you gotta come up with that formula in your head. For me, it's when I ask myself too many questions, time to quit. So again, I do all my instruments into one instrument track. If you can see here, this is the 808 track. Let me show you what I have on the 808. So on the 808 track right here, let me make just that one big. Evan, her recording engineer, had the Pro EQ3, but it's not doing anything. So he had it on there. I think he was going to do something. He also put this on here, the Puig Tech. He boosted a little bit of the 30 hertz to make it thump a little bit. And I put this on here, which is the Pull Tech. This is one of my go-tos for low end for kicks. And I boosted the low frequency to 60. I didn't attenuate much. I just kind of boosted the 60 hertz up to about 4. And again, don't focus so much on what I'm doing. Focus on why I'm doing it. I always tell people, when people ask me questions, people be online, ask me random questions like, hey, what do I need to do to make my kick hit better? Well, I can't answer that question because I didn't hear your kick. Right. Make sure that you're thinking about the why, not the what. Don't focus on what I do. Focus on why I do it. So I'm saying that to say I boosted 60 hertz because I wanted to hear more 60 hertz. Simple. Don't overthink this. Don't overprocess it. I always tell people too, most of the questions that you would have that are technical, the answer is usually embedded in the question. What I mean by that is people will say to me, hey man, how do I get my vocals to stand out in the mix more? Turn them up. Hey man, my kick just ain't hitting hard enough. Make it hit harder. Turn up the low end. Hey man, my bass sounds a little muddy. Back off on the low end. Sometimes the answer, a lot of times, especially with technical things, the answer is baked into the question. And a lot of times what I found is what I unlock for a lot of young engineers is you just got to give your permission to choose the simplest answer. We want it to be complicated. We want it to have this rocket science answer. We want to think that Leslie Brathwaite has secrets and I'm here to learn all the secrets and unlock all. No, I just do simple shit. And sometimes I just turn a knob until it feels good. Sometimes I just throw a plugin on there, and before I even touch a preset, once I put it on and it sounds better, I leave it alone. People don't believe that, but it's true. Sometimes, in most cases, the simplest answer tends to be the right answer. Don't overcomplicate this. Don't make it rocket science. Sometimes it's just simple.
Yeah.
You want your vocal to stand out a little more? Turn it up. Just that simple. It don't always have a complicated answer. Most of the times it doesn't, especially when it comes to do with me.
Yeah, I like how when we before we started, you were talking how you was kind of saying like, yeah, I'll show people this session so they can see what I do or how little I actually do, and I feel that because like on that track, you added one plugin and boosted a couple dB at 60, you left some stuff that was already there intact too.
I didn't feel the need to go to backtrack and take off what he had. It was already a vibe. I just wanted to hear a little more. I wanted a little more 60 hertz. I wanted a little more. I wanted it to knock. I wanted to shake my jeans a little more. You know, like when you turn the speakers up and your jeans be shaking a little bit outside your leg, that's when I know it's hitting right. It's those little things. So, and then again, here's the kick. There's the kick drum. And all I did was I added the Fairchild on it in default mode. Look at that, factory default. I didn't do nothing. I just threw it on there and it gave the kick a little presence that I wanted. And I left it alone and moved on. Some people feel like they have to mess with a preset or a knob. Sometimes just throwing the plug-in on there actually does what you wanted it to do.
Yeah.
And then here we have hi-hat. Here we have, oh no, I'm sorry. That was the snare. That's the snare right here that I just put the Fairchild on because I just wanted the snare to crack through a little more. And if you just throw the Fairchild on in default mode, it'll do that. And then the hi-hat, it sounded like a hi-hat. I didn't need to do nothing. So I left it alone. There's no plug-in on it. People see my sessions and they freak out sometimes and they're like, how are you not processing the hi-hat? Well, sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes it already sounded like a hi-hat. I'm good. I'm just rocking. And so that's the case in a lot of records that you see me mix. Like if you look at a lot of my tracks, they don't have a ton of stuff on them. Mm-hmm. And then some of them came with stuff on them that I deactivated because I didn't think it was necessary. And then this is Evan's Pro EQ, where he filtered out a lot of the low end in this particular sound. And I believe this sound kind of sounds like a little choir type sample-y sound. And he just wanted to filter out that so it has more of the mid and the high. And then that's it. Want to have more mid and high, take away some of the low.
Yeah.
Subtractive mentality. Instead of, again, using the subtractive mentality, when I approach a mix, the first thing I do is every sound, I go, what don't I like about this sound? And then I take that away. Instead of what tends to be the intuitive way to approach it is, ooh, let me add some this or let me add some that. I'm always subtracting. And I look at it like when I clean up a room. I always use that analogy. If you come into a room and you want to clean a room, first thing you do, you don't just start cleaning surfaces, you remove the trash. You take out the things that don't belong in the room. Then you start cleaning surfaces. So for me, it's the same thing with mixing. What don't I like about this sound? So for instance, this sound had too much low end in it. So instead of adding high end to fix the problem, again, use the question to inform the answer. It had too much low end in it. Don't then go to the high end. Focus on the fact that it had too much low end in it. Take away the low end. That's what I'm saying. It's about how you train your mind to think about this that will make it so simple for you.
Nice.
And then I think this sound was and this was another sound where you could tell by the curve. I don't even got to listen to it to tell. Evan wanted it to sound like it was on a telephone or like a radio because of the frequencies he highlighted. He took, again, notice he didn't boost anything. He wanted it to sound real mid telephony, but he didn't boost anything. He just took away the low end and took away the high end. Mm-hmm. See the difference in the mentality? Where some people would have got this and boosted this up all the way up here. No, take away this, take away that, and then you have this. So that's, to me, the best approach as you're mixing is, I just messed that up. Open.
I think it's a copy of the session, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and then same thing with this sound. He wanted to get rid of the low end. And again, you notice I'm not doing anything much over what Evan did with these sounds. These sounds are what they are. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be a whole bunch of da-da-da. Now we get down to Cardi's vocal. So notice on Cardi's vocal, let's go here to her lead one. I'll get back up to the other vocal in a minute. So this is her hook vocal. She's saying this thing, this chant. What you usually find is on the actual vocal track, Evan puts stuff that he likes and he's trying to create a sound that she likes. So he's got a little bit of low end rolled off because she tends to record very close to the mic. And anybody who records close to a microphone, you're going to get way more low end than you should. And if you think about it in an intuitive sense, like when people talk to you, they don't be that close to you. They're invading your bubble if they're that close to you. So naturally, you that close to a microphone, you get way more low end. So you're going to always have, and most people in most situations, they're too close to the mic, which I shouldn't say too close. They're close because they're trying not to get too much of the room. So it's okay to be too close to the mic. We just got to compensate for it now by rolling off some of the low end. So that's the first thing you saw Evan do. Next thing, he rolled off some of this gone key, low mid stuff down here, and he boosted some highs. And then he did the RVOX, which is like a compressor, vocal compressor. He's hitting it fairly decently, I think. Let me turn this volume down. And let me make sure I ain't sharing. No, I just want to see how it was hitting. Okay. Y'all didn't hear nothing, did y'all? Y'all ain't gonna tell me if y'all heard anything either. Y'all gonna lie and be like, nah, we ain't heard nothing. Just so y'all can be getting exclusives. I know how y'all bro.
You heard it here first, y'all.
I see what y'all doing. They'll be like, nah, we ain't hear nothing. Keep playing.
We ain't hear nothing. You can keep playing it.
So yeah, I can tell he's doing a little bit of compression there. My theory on compression in general, when it comes to vocals, if you can hear the compressor working, you're compressing too much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So my theory is the compression should help to tame things, but if you hear it actually biting down and compressing on a sound, you're probably compressing a little too much, is my theory. Next, he had a little responsive EQ going here. You can tell we're always trying to figure out her high mid situation because she has a very nasally voice, but all of the clarity in her voice is up in those tones as well. So it's the funniest battle with her because she knows her voice is nasally, but she also knows that's the characteristic of her voice. So I always tell her, like, look, we're not trying to take away your nasally. That's who you are. You sound like that. You Cardi B. You know, you be doing all that.
Right.
And then the funniest thing is she's always bitching about, she be like, she says it to Evan, she says it to me. She'd be like, Leslie, I sound too Spanish. I'm like, I can't fix that part. Like, you just Spanish. I don't know what to tell you. So it's the funniest thing where she literally says this every time we mix. She'd be like, I sound too Spanish. I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, so
there's no setting. What do you have a D Spanisher plug-in?
Right. I'm like, what? I don't even understand that comment. Like, what do you mean you sound too Spanish? You're Spanish. So anyway, so from that track, he's now pushing to this aux track. And most of these, with exception of the first one, this is him. He pulled out this frequency because it was annoying him. It was some frequency right in here that was annoying him. And then all of these are going to be me. So actually, this was Evan. He had a de-esser on this particular frequency that was bothering him. This de-esser is going to be me. I usually de-ess at this frequency because this is the frequency that usually annoys me the most. And I usually de-ess right at 4237. It's usually a standard frequency of S's that I hate.
Okay.
And from there, I EQ. Now, what you see here is a notch EQ. There was a specific frequency that I hated that I wanted to get rid of. Usually how you can find that frequency is like this. When it starts out, you play it, and usually, you know, you're right here. What I usually do is, so we're at 3.24, right? Usually this starts off default at 2. So what I'll do is, and usually it's the high mid frequency somewhere in there. It's usually this green one that something's bothering me. This usually defaults at 1, which is how wide. So for instance, if you see me push this up, you see this determines how dialed in we are on the frequency. The wider this is, the more frequencies that will be affected as I push up the volume. When you dial it into 10, all the way to 10, it's going to just affect that frequency and just a couple of frequencies around it. And that's where you usually want to be when you're trying to lock in on a frequency. So again, it starts, this is the default position of this particular EQ. So usually the first thing I do, I dial it into 10. I turn this all the way up, wherever it's defaulted at, 2K. And then the very next thing is the most important step. You turn your speakers down really low. Because these frequencies can damage your tweeter if they're up too loud. So turn your speakers down super low. Like the lowest you can possibly take it to where you can still hear something. Then I play the thing and I sweep. So as I play her vocal, I then move this like this. And I keep playing the part. Sometimes I'll just cycle one part. So I might just pick a part like right here. And I might just keep cycling that. And as it plays, I'll sweep. And I'll sweep and I'll keep going and I'll keep going. And then when I get to, what was the number? 3.24, I think. When I got to that number, even at a very low volume, I can hear that frequency that I hated being super exaggerated. And that's when I know that's the frequency I want to get rid of. And then I go like this. I take this in the opposite direction. And usually when I play it back and play it from that position and turn up a little louder, the vocal usually sounds better to me because I got rid of the frequency that was bothering. So that's usually how that's done. Everybody following me so far? Everybody good?
Yep. Good. I think we're great.
All right. So from there, I tamed the frequency that I didn't like. A little light compression, 1.77 ratio, nothing too crazy happening. You can see it hitting the compressor, barely compressor, just keeping her a little tame. You're not going to be able to hear that much compression. Then I EQ, and again, you see me pulling out a little more low end because I know what I'm getting ready to do is push her volume, her vocal way up in your face. I want even more low end out so she can sound clear. I'm pushing through the top. See me backing down on the high mids because her voice is nasally and annoying. So I got to back down on some of that, pushing some of the clarity on the top. Then we get to the Fairchild. Again, the preset is my preset that I saved, but it's damn near like the default, only I back down the channels just a touch. So if I go to the default, you notice that's the default position. If you go to mine, you notice I back down the channels and my threshold is slightly different. And that's just me playing with it a bit that I like it there. And what this plugin particularly does is it adds a lot of presence to a vocal. It takes a vocal from sounding here to right in your face. It's more about volume, but it's also more about presence. It brings a lot of the function of a vocal out just right in front of your face, and she loves that. And then even more so, to make it even more present and even more annoying and even more in your face, I put a limiter on it and do a little bit of limiting, nothing too crazy. You don't even see it attenuating much, but you can hear this. When you put this on, you hear it just even a little more present in your face. And then when I do all that, my S's are still slightly annoying. I DS again. Same frequency, but I boosted a lot of things that I loved, and then that S started to stick out again, and then I DS again. So you give, there's something people always ask me like, oh, you DS twice? Yeah, sometimes you can give yourself permission to do whatever is necessary. Don't think of it, people always think of it as a thing, like, oh, I didn't think you could DS twice. Well, why not? You can DS how many times you want to. Does it sound good? That's what you're going for. And if after I did all that, the S's started to stick out again, DS again. You know, people always ask me things like, well, I didn't know you could turn it up that much. Or when I do things like this, I had one young lady in France when I was doing Mix with the Masters. When I did this and I showed how I got rid of that frequency, she was like, man, I would have never thought I could turn it all the way down like that. And I'm like, why not? If it bothers you and you want to get rid of it, get rid of it. Give yourself permission is the thing I think a lot of times younger engineers don't do. Give yourself permission to turn that knob all the way up or all the way down or DS again. Give yourself permission to do these things as long as it sounds good. Your goal is, does it sound good? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach, and I see like in your chain the way you do things. I'm sure you probably have like a way that you do stuff, but it seems like you are reacting constantly to what you're hearing and trying to just take it where you want to go instead of kind of coming in with a preconceived mission.
I don't have a template. I do not have a template. This is typically what I would do, but there's no template. I don't just load up a session and a template appears. I literally put each plugin on every time. One by one. I don't have a template because to me that template mentality tends to point towards the fact that everything sounds the same. Everything does not sound the same. So just like you just said, Wavy, I literally only react to what I'm hearing. So every plugin is intentional. Every plugin is there for a reason. Nothing drives me crazy than when I see a session where I get it from an engineer and like I see a session and the vocal has a de-esser on it and they ain't say one S. Like it'd be like I'll be seeing sessions where like the backgrounds would be like ooh ah and it's just a bunch of oohs and ahs and then they got de-essers on them. Like ain't no S's. Why you put a de-esser on him? Because that's what you're used to doing.
That's how they learn to treat a vocal.
Right. You think that that's what you're supposed to do. Just like you said, for me, the best way to do this is to react to what you're hearing. Do it that way. Put the plugin on that applies to what you're hearing. If ain't nobody saying no S's or no T's, you might not need a de-esser.
Now, when it comes to no template, does that apply to you too for your like your time-based effects? I see like in this session, there's a lot of like aux tracks with different delays and reverbs in it.
Same thing. No template. No. And a lot of times, what I do as a mixer, I rely on the effects that they came up with. So all of these in green is Evan. Evan did all that. He had the plate on there, and he had the H delay. And my thing is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
And when you know your artist well, that's the other thing. Cardi's one of those artists who she ain't gonna want it coming back sounding very different from what she sent it. She doesn't want the delays to be different or the reverb to be different. She wants it to kind of sound like how she heard it when she sent it to me. So I honor that, and I don't change none of her effects. Same thing with Uzi. Uzi's very particular about how much reverb and where his vocal sits and da-da-da. So I don't change any of that stuff. All the effects that it comes with, that's what it's going to go out with.
Yeah.
So it's about not trying to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to sit here and try to redo an EQ that Evan uses. Like Evan used the Valhalla. I don't typically use it, but because he used it, I'm gonna leave it on there because that's what she heard and that's what she liked. Why would I need to go replace that? She liked it how it was. Now it's on for me. My job is to make her sit well in this mix and to make this mix bang. It's not to change her particulars. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, and I want to point out that, you definitely are dealing with a luxury that a lot of us listening may not be dealing with on the day-to-day with clients that we're working with. Like, you have artists that know what they want, and engineers that know, like the recording engineer that knows how to, already come up with a really good rough mix before you get it and have some stuff in place. What kind of advice would you give us who might be struggling with less than ideal recordings and sessions that we get that, we might need to, change everything in those cases?
Yeah. And I do get those sometimes. And in those cases, just go with your gut and the things will work. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a template mentality, but a mentality of, okay, I know I like this reverb. Like for me, I like the Altiverb reverb because of the impulse responses. There's a couple rooms I like in there. So if I get a session where there's no reverb and I need to put reverb on there, I'm going to go to the Altiverb. I'm going to go to there's a hockey stadium in there. I really like how that reverb dissipates. And then I'll put like a Moog filter on it. In fact, I could show you. Yeah. So for instance, let's say I was putting a reverb on this channel. I would use this bad boy right here. Can y'all see the plugin as it comes up?
Yes, we do see it.
You see it? Okay. So I would use this bad boy right here, and I would go to this particular room. I like this room. I like how the reverb dissipates in this. And I just like this reverb because it uses pictures, and I'm like 5, and I like pictures. So I just like to see shit. And, I'm one of those, like, if I'm reading a book, you better put pictures in the book, else I'm not reading the whole book. So because there's pictures and the plugin looks colorful and I can tell what kind of room I'm in, I'll use the I guess it's called the Lanxess Arena. And then what I'll do is I'll come here, I'll go to my UAD, and I'll put a Moog. Most reverbs sound too bright to me in general. And I'll filter off the top end of the reverb right here, just right here on the cutoff. Yeah. I might go like that. And that gives the reverb a nice feel, but it's not too bright. Okay. And that might be my reverb that I go with most of the time.
Okay, nice.
Every now and then, if I want a shorter reverb, I'll come back here and choose this room. The MC05. It's like a kind of symphonic room, slightly smaller room. Still a nice reverb, and I like it. And again, play around with the things you like and see what's your go-tos. And sometimes I might use both. I might put this reverb, and then I might put a whole nother track with the other reverb and blend them and have like the longer reverb real low, have the shorter reverb a little higher, just to take up more space. It's just playing around and coming up with what you like and what your sound is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Unless you have something else you want to share in this session, I think it might be
this is pretty much my process. And again, okay. The couple staples about my process is I try to make quick decisions. I try not to harp on decisions. So I literally, how I mix is this. So I start with vocals. I'll start with the lead. I'll craft the lead, get all these vocals to sound how I want them to sound. Then I'll mute the vocals. I'll go to the instruments. I'll start with the kicks, the drums, the 808s, make all that hit and knock, get all the music in there, get it sounding how I want. And then I'll marry the vocals and the track together. And then I'll go from there and I'll make it. It's a really quick process for me. I don't like to lament on a mix. I don't like to sit there and figure out, is it sound? I try to make quick decisions. Again, as a younger engineer, you may have to work up to that. You have to build up to what your sound is, what your go-to things are, but try to get in the mentality of not sitting around mixing drums for 8 hours, or quicker decisions are usually better decisions. Usually the instinct, the part of you that kicks in instinct wise and how something sounds, and more importantly, how it feels, that's the thing you trust the most. And I always tell people the goal as an engineer is you want to make people feel something. That's what you want. You want, when you listen to music, what you're trying to deliver is a feel. Feel is more important than anything on it. I've mixed plenty of records where I'll let a bad note slide because it felt good.
Yeah.
Like sometimes a bad note feels good and you try to correct it and it don't feel the same. If you listen to records in the 90s, Babyface, that man was always flat, but it felt good. Yeah. That man sang flat. All of his records, he's flat, but they felt good. Bob Marley had flat notes in a lot of his records, but the feel was incredible.
Yeah.
So like feel is more important than anything else when you're listening to it. How a record makes you feel is more important than anything else. So with that theme, getting through it and trusting your instincts on how it made you feel is important for me.
Okay. Word up. Thank you. All right, let's go to some questions from the Wavy Seals Elite. If you want to
absolutely. You don't have, and it just so y'all know, I'm an open book, as you can tell. So your questions don't have to be limited to anything technical. It could be personal, it could be financial, it could be family. I get a lot of questions on how you balance family life, and just ask anything, because I do think while the technical stuff is important, I can tell you that your success is going to be largely based on a whole lot of other stuff. And so all that other stuff is just as important as the technical. So don't just limit your questions to technical. I'm an open book. I'll answer anything. Go for it.
So Elite's in the on the call with us. If y'all got a question, if you would just use the hand raise feature in Zoom, and then I'll go by, as I see them pop up, and ask you to unmute yourself to come in and ask Leslie a question. All right. So our first question, we're going to go with Mr. Ray Spider. And just keep the hands raised until you ask your question.
How you doing? Thank you for the information. I can relate to a lot of the things that you were talking about. But I'm curious. I was curious to know, so when you said that when you was working with Michael Jackson, you worked from January to June, how did the pay situation work? They pay you weekly, monthly? Was it after everything was done? How did that work?
Now, specifically with the Michael project, we got a weekly stipend to spend just on some, it was like a per diem, and we got it weekly, and it was a lot of money too. And that was just a per diem. And then what we worked out our rates, and then they paid us every month. They paid us our rate for the month. So at the end of every month we got a check, but we were also getting per diem, which, our per diem was like, I think our per diem was like $1,500 a week in cash. They would come and hand us an envelope with $1,500 every week. And I was like, damn, this is more than I would make at home working just in general. So that was the come up project for me. Let me tell you, I came back home and bought a truck right away when I came back. Like, I was like, yes. So typically, let's talk about pay. Typically what I like to say is, even as a young engineer or producer starting out, that's always a area of weirdness sometimes, is getting paid for your work. How much do you charge? All that kind of stuff. What I say is these two things. The first thing is, whatever you establish as your rate or what you're charging, it's never unfair to ask for a first half up front. It's always a good thing, because even if it's just $300 or $200, and somebody say, okay, can you mix this record for me? And they say, oh, all I got is $200. Okay, can you give me $100 up front? Because what the upfront money does is it just guarantees that you don't waste your time. So I've had every scenario under the sun, from the artist got locked up, to the artist didn't like the mix and didn't want to pay me the rest, to the artist got shot and died. It's every iteration of reason under the sun for the artist to not pay you the back end. You know what I mean? So by saying, hey, let me get the front end and then I'll mix the record. Whatever reason comes up on the back end to where you don't get the back half, at least you got something for your work, is how I look at it. At least you didn't waste your time. And in so many scenarios, that's relevant. The other thing is how you determine your rate. A lot of times for me, I've always just let the industry kind of determine it. Sometimes a good rule of thumb, especially when you're starting out and you don't know exactly what to charge, check with your friends, see what they're charging. Or when you deal with a client and they say, hey, man, I want you to mix some records. And you say, well, what were you thinking? Let them say a number sometimes. Sometimes them saying a number is actually a good thing because they will say something that, hold on 1 second. Hi, Zoe, come here. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on 1 second.
Not a problem, man. Work from home.
Good to see you. My daughter just went to New York and she just got back, so I had to say, hey. Hi.
Okay.
I missed you.
I'll show you pictures and all the stuff I got, okay?
Of course. How did you get home?
Huh? Oh, Miss Jessica dropped me off.
Oh, okay. All right. Good to see you.
I love you. I'll tell you about my trip.
All right. All right. Love you too. Sorry, my daughter was in New York with her 8th grade class and they just got home, so I had to say, hey.
That's what's up, family first.
So what was I saying?
Get paid.
Yes. So a lot of times if you let them say it first, what happens is sometimes, and this has worked out in my favor, sometimes they'll say a number that's higher than what you were going to say. So, and this works out, especially like when you're dealing with street cats, you know, I'm talking about them street dudes who got that, that brown paper bag money, you know what I'm saying? Now I like to call it the brown paper bag money. Sometimes they come to you and ask you for a mix and then you'd be like, they'd be like, what you charge? And I'd be like, well, what were you budgeting? And then they'll say a number. I'd be like, yeah, okay, we could do that. Because what I was going to say was way less, but they in the streets and they getting a different kind of money and they don't even know no better. You know what I mean? And they've said some astronomical numbers. So you got to remember, these dudes who in the streets, like they're making millions a month, doing crazy, whatever. So they going to say a number. You'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll definitely mix it for that. So I've had those situations too, where you may want to let them say a number first and see what they come up with. And sometimes it doesn't work in your favor. You let them say a number and it's too low and you'd be like, well, and then you get to negotiate. And then remember, it's a negotiation. Hey, well, I would like to charge this. Let's see where we can meet at, da-da-da. So again, and the other rule of thumb is if you keep asking for a rate that you're not getting, you might not be worth that. And you got to face that reality. You might not be worth $2,500 a mix or whatever you're trying to charge and nobody wants to pay it. So there's that reality too.
Okay, right on. Thank you for that. Let's go to DJ Just 100.
Hey, what up, though? So I guess 2 quick questions. One, you had talked about just like how you're pretty much in the box. You see that like that being like the future is like in the box. Do you feel like that there is any room for like hybrid mixing where we would include analog? Is that maybe just more on the front end doing tracking? And then like the second quick question was on your mix bus. Is that IK multimedia typically what you're using, or is it more just a feel where if you feel like it may need a little bit of compression, you may put a compressor on there. If it needs a little bit of EQ, you may do that. So that's the second question.
Well, I'll answer the second question first. The only thing I ever use on my mix bus is the IK multimedia. I don't put anything else on my mix bus. If I was going to put something on it, it would only be that. Just because I just don't like coloring up the mix with too many things and too much stuff. To answer your first question, I think hybrid mixing and hybrid recording may be a thing for a while. And I think for some people it will, and for some people it won't. I think more mixers you're gonna see more mixers just strictly in the box over time. And I think, like I said, over time it'll just be no big studios, no big large format studios. And I think most people will be in the box because the technology is getting better. You know what I mean? And it's no different from, like I said, I remember when special effects first came out in movies and we had Superman and they were still using some machines to do special effects and So and then they all switched over to computers and CGI, and now it's to the point where there's a way to do it that doesn't involve any analog technology. You know what I mean? So I think eventually you'll see the switch to all in the box everything for most people. That's how I am, but there's a lot of mixers who still mix hybrid, but I think you'll see the transition.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, DJ Just 100, for that. I think we're good on that. Cool. Let's go to Cash at Hand.
What's going on? I just had a question. I know you are, experienced engineer. I'm brand new, but I'm also an artist. So I was just going to ask you, what advice would you have to a brand new artist? And then in my case, a brand new artist that is relatively older.
Okay. Well, first of all, keep your eyes on the road. Don't be looking down. Stay. Keep your eyes on the road. But I would say just try to lock in with a producer that fits the sound you're going for. Never look at age as something that's a problem. It just means you got more experience than a lot of people in life. So age ain't the issue. The real issue is, are you dope or not? And if you feel like you're dope and you lock in with somebody that fits the sound you're trying to go for, lock in with somebody. It might be somebody your age. It might actually be advantageous to find somebody that's a lot younger than you, since if you feel like the age thing can be a problem or might be a problem, your connectivity point might be finding a producer that's more on the younger side of things and really collaborating and bringing that experience and that flow to something a little younger. Or you may find somebody in your age range that, got more of an old school type of feel that really fits what you're trying to do. And there's always an audience for every type of music. So it's about just really believing in your craft, listening to your audience. If you have an audience, listen to your audience. The internet is an amazing tool. So start a SoundCloud, start your social media channels, and just put your stuff up and see how, try to just monitor the responses that you're getting and the feedback you're getting. So that's what I would say.
Dope. Nice question. Let's go to Big Ben.
Big Ben, the prodigy.
What up, Leslie? I had a question about something you talked to earlier in the segment. You talking about working with Bruce Swedien and that he had taught you some tricks. And I was wondering how, what kind of tricks he may have taught you during your talks, and how you incorporated those things into the digital realm.
It's funny, and it's right in line with what we've talked about all day. Most of the things I've learned from Bruce that I would consider tricks, they aren't even technical. Most of the things I learned from Bruce are how to deal with difficult personalities. Bruce taught me, one of the most famous things Bruce taught me is, sometimes people give you input on mixes, and if you know better, just tell them you did what they said and do whatever the fuck you feel like doing. And that was his exact words. Do whatever the fuck you feel like doing. So a lot of times it's that old soul knowledge that you get from a guy like Bruce was about how to deal with people. He taught me about being organized. I remember one of the first lessons he taught me was, man, when you look at your session, make sure your session looks organized and it doesn't look crazy, so that you make less mistakes. He was the one that taught me that principle of, how you make less mistakes when your stuff is organized, or just a ton of things. But most of the things I talked about tonight, I learned from him in a sense of how you approach a certain thing, where even the concept of, when you approach something, what don't you like about it first? I learned that from Bruce. So most of the things I learned from Bruce that I would call tips or tricks were things that weren't necessarily super technical, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Word up. Good question. Let's go to Musically and MC.
Thank you, Leslie, for coming through, because this was really amazing lesson. But Cash at Hand stole my question about the age limit, so I had to switch it up. So my question is, did you ever have a plan B if your plan A didn't work?
No, I am one of those people who I don't believe in plan Bs. You know what I find interesting about the plan B conversation? I've said this so many times. Have you ever noticed when you ask people what their plan A is and they tell you, and then you ask them what their plan B is, have you ever noticed consistently most people's plan B is very different from their plan A? Have you ever noticed that? Like people will say, hey man, you know, I want to do music, but my backup is I'm gonna do accounting in college. Or you ever notice their plan B is so different from their plan A? And I just be like, why is that? So I've always had this mentality that I don't believe in plan Bs. I believe in, for me, specifically when it comes to this goal and this dream, it was going to be get rich or die trying. In that mentality of, and not about money, but I'm saying it was about to be, it's going to be music or death for me. And I meant that in my soul, in a sense of there's nothing else I wanted to do on this planet. I know I was put here to do music, and it was going to be that or death. Whenever you put something on the table as an option, you literally also just made the first goal an option. So when you have a plan A, if you come up with a plan B, plan A also becomes an option. Just by default, just the nature of that thinking. This wasn't an option for me. It was never going to be an option. This is the plan. However it's going to shape out, it's going to shape out, but there's no option with music. You see what I'm saying? There is no plan B when it comes to, you know what I'm saying? So the minute something becomes an option, it also becomes an option for you to take. So I just didn't even understand that. Now, with the plan B mentality, like I said, the other thing is some people's brain don't work like that. Some people do need to have a backup. And what I always suggest is just make sure your plan B is kind of close to your plan A. I never understood the mentality that people have when they say, it's my plan A and it's my plan B. And plan B sounds nothing like plan A, like not even close. Like people, I can't tell you how many people have told me, yeah, I wanted to be an actress, but if that didn't work out, I was going to be an attorney. I'm like, huh? Like, how is your plan B so far from your plan A? So for me, that was never going to be an option. I was never going to make my plan A an option. And the minute you put a plan B in the picture, plan A now becomes an option. Is no option. Music or death.
Word up. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Music Lead. Let's go to Lex Ghost.
Appreciate you being here. Know there's jewels you dropping in here. Got a little treasure chest right now. I'm not gonna share it with nobody else. But one, you think OJ did it?
Yes. He absolutely killed his ex-wife. Absolutely.
Or you think he had his boy do it?
No, I think he did it.
All right, I'd rather make sure. Now, the crazy part is, I like how you said all them things intertwined, and you've seen how the history and the detail, because for you, the universe was working something on you, and you paid attention, because life be dropping jewels. You gotta be like Batman and pick up clues.
Right.
So I like how you put all that. I just had to say something. I know there's a million things I could ask so technical, but I just wanted to see how you felt about that, because I seen the look in your eyes. I know what that meant. We appreciate you for everything you've been dropping in here.
Thank you.
You're a legend. You're a legend. I be watching your videos too, so you know. We all watching you, just like we watching Wavy. Wavy be putting us on the things. We got subscriptions. We like all this shit. But for real, no. All the BS to the side, we over here learning things, and we because of people like him and people like you, we out here learning things on a whole nother level. So we appreciate you, gentlemen, and salute.
Word up.
That's
nobody ever do it like y'all. Nobody ever do it like y'all. Just put it like that if I push this mute.
Right on.
Thank
Lex.
you, man. I appreciate that. That means a lot. And absolutely, definitely giving you your props, Wavy, for the platform and for what you do as well. Like, it is dope that you do that, and it is dope that we are like-minded. We are of the same tribe where we trying to pass it on. We trying to teach. We trying to strengthen the community. I love that about you, and I love that we got to know each other, and I love that we hooked up on this, because that's dope energy. Like, to be able to pass on knowledge, to be able to, you know, the best. I read a quote not too long ago that said, the best thing, that the two obligations you have in life: figure out what your gift is, and then give it away. And those are the two things I live by, and I love that you are the same.
Yo,
so
that's facts.
for that.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being here. You definitely an icon, you know, for me. So, you know, to hear those words from you mean a whole lot, and to have your time means a whole lot to me. Thank you, for sure.
Robin, we got some more questions.
We do. Let's go to Vinci Smokes.
Yeah, you had your hand up for a long time.
You know, patience is a virtue. I appreciate all the stuff that you told us today, and like for even sharing like the stories with Michael Jackson and all that stuff. My question for you is, so basically I'm having my first internship on Thursday at Platinum Records, and I just really wanted to like tap into like any ideas that or advice that you can give me for like working at a more professional setting versus working in my home studio, which is where I mostly work at.
It's really just about just doing the things you normally do. Treat the professional settings like your home. You wouldn't walk past trash in your house. Don't do it in somebody else's house. So it's all those kind of things that I tell people. Those are the things that are, when you treat something like it's yours, when you treat something like you really want to be there and you care, people see that and they feel that. And I that was one of my little tests all the time. I would have like a group of interns come in, and I put like a little cup on the floor, I ball it up, and it never fails. I used to have these group of students from Berkeley that would come to my studio, and I would ball up a little paper cup and throw it on the floor. And there's always one person that would come in and pick that cup up and throw it in the trash. And I'd be like, that's the person I would hire. And I would always make note of that person. And a few of those people have gone on to do amazing things. And it's that mentality, that mentality of they just walked into a building and saw a need and filled it. There was trash on the floor. The last young lady, I remember her well, still to this day. This happened before COVID. This was in 2019. She walked in the door immediately. She just picked up the cup and threw it in the trash. And I was like, I would hire her in a heartbeat. I can teach everything else under the sun. I can teach you everything you need to know about Pro Tools. I can't teach that. I couldn't teach you how to care about, I can teach you how to pick up trash. I couldn't teach you how to care about it. You see what I'm saying? Those are two very different things. She cared enough when she walked in there. She didn't want to see trash on the floor. Can't teach that. So just remember, do the things that you would do if it were your place. Yeah, and just navigate the way you would, and that you know how to navigate. And that's why we talked about earlier about who you are as a person, your morals, your things that you've decided, this is who I am. Make sure you bring that into your workplace. So I ain't trying to impress nobody when I'm in the studio and smoke weed when I know I don't smoke weed. I don't smoke weed. I can't tell you how many times people have looked at me like I'm a fucking alien when I say I don't drink. They look at me like I got 3 heads, and I'd be like, I just don't drink. And you know what's the most interesting part of that conversation? Whenever somebody asks me why I don't drink, and I'd be like, I have no specific reason, because most people think, oh, might be a recovering alcoholic or something, I'd be like, no, I just don't like how it tastes, The most interesting part of that exchange is when I ask people, well, why do you drink? They can never give me an answer. That's the funniest thing about that question. They never can give me a solid answer. Most people say some shit like, oh, to take the edge off. But I know, I'll be like, no, to really, why do you drink? Nobody has an answer. So it's just funny to me that, you know, people have tried to make me feel like I'm an alien because I don't drink. But again, that's not who I am. So I'm not going to pretend to be that to be cool with everybody else. So be yourself. Be who you are. Do what you know is right. You'll be fine.
Word up.
I highly appreciate it.
All right, let's go to my man Darren J. Shout out to the Wavy Seals Elite. I see some people in the chat asking how how some people is on here, you know, talking face to face with my man, Mr. Brathwaite. But they tapped into the Wavy Seals Elite. Make sure y'all, you know, check out the website if y'all interested in being down with these types of events, you know. But we will be getting to some questions from the YouTube chat. So make sure y'all populating that chat too with some questions. Darren J, what up?
Yes, sir. What's going on, everyone? Leslie, I just want to say thank you for your wisdom, bro. You kind of remind me of Herb from Pensado's place. I got a chance to meet him, and his wisdom and your wisdom equally is just mind blowing. So I appreciate that first, and the most important thing. We need more people of character in this world. We know that. And before I ask my question, for everybody on YouTube, make sure y'all, you know, take care of the people that take care of you, and let's show Wavy some badge love up in that chat. Yes, sir.
Yes, you have been supporting. Shout out to you for supporting with them badges in the chat for sure.
Get them badges, $1, $2, $5, $20. But anyway, Leslie, question for you. Did you feel like coming up that you had to focus on like niching down? Because, you know, you spoke to, hey, you alluded to the fact of having like one mixer, one master, somebody who solely does the one thing. But there's so many people that produce a record and mix records, right? I get a lot of singer-songwriters that come to me with a scratch guitar, like, hey, can you make some music out of this? And I feel like that process is so long. And for me, I rather, you know, in the short, if I had my way, I would rather just mix records. Like that's what I generally love. And I feel like in a way I have to niche down. Or do you feel like there's benefit in doing both as you're coming up? Or what are your thoughts on that as well?
I think those are very individual decisions. I think that if you are a person that thrives doing a lot, doing multiple things at once, you should do that. You should honor who that is in yourself and do that. For me, anybody who thinks like me, or I would recommend, hey, focus on one thing, be great at one thing, be known for that one thing, and then branch out into other things. I think that tends to work out best, but I don't want to be one to prescribe that for anybody. If you feel like doing a couple of things works for you, like I said, there are guys who mix and master and they do fine and they do great. In my experience, I've never met somebody who does both that's great at both. Doesn't mean that I'm saying I've never met somebody who does both that isn't great at one. Jason Joshua was the example I used earlier. Jason mixes and masters. I think he's a great mixer. I don't necessarily know that I feel like he's a great mastering engineer. But again, it ain't for me to determine, and I'm not the end all be all. That's just how I feel. I feel like it's better to master one thing, be known for that thing, and then branch out. And that's essentially what Jason did. So to be honest with you, I mean, he mastered being a mix engineer. Now he's mastering at certain points. And I mean, again, I think that's an individual thing. I think people should do the thing that speaks to them. I don't think there's any one size fits all. I don't think there's any one answer for everybody. I think everybody should approach a thing how they think they need to approach a thing. If you want to do 50 things at once, do that. And if you can thrive doing that, you should do that. I absolutely feel that way. So
appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Right on. Thank you, Darren. Let's go ahead and get my man JP, and then we're going to grab some questions from the YouTube chat.
Absolutely.
All right. So I really got can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for your time, by the way, tonight, just like everybody else. And so I have kind of two questions. I'm going to preface off with like this first one. So what would you recommend for someone in the space who feels like they're spreading themselves too thin? Because right now I work full-time at Costco, record artists, make beats, mix, artist, track, master, and I'm also trying to work my YouTube thing. And I feel like I can't devote any one thing. I feel like I'm decent at everything, but I'm not I feel like I don't have the ability right now to just master one thing. So what would you kind of recommend?
Well, I think what comes down to is practical decisions. So what thing do you make the most money from? Costco?
At this time, yes.
Yes. So clearly Costco is the thing you need to survive. So we can't take that off the table. The YouTube thing and all the tracking and mixing and Which one brings you more joy?
Probably tracking. I enjoy tracking a lot.
Which one are you better at?
Probably tracking than my YouTube at the moment.
Okay, so in my opinion, by process of elimination, I would eliminate and when I say eliminate, not totally get rid of it, but I would devote a lot more time to the tracking, keep the Costco in play because you got to survive. But the thing that you're most passionate about sometimes doesn't align with the thing that you're good at. So you have to be realistic there. Now, if the thing you're most passionate about is the thing you're good at, I think that's the thing to focus on. And the YouTube channel may need to take a back seat until you get to a point where all things can connect or Costco can be out of the picture. When you start making money from the tracking to where Costco doesn't need to be in the picture, then the YouTube thing can take more precedence. So I think it's just process of elimination. You figure out which one you need and figure out which one you love and figure out which one you're good at. And hopefully the one you love and the one you're good at can stay. The one you need has to stay. And then that, by process of elimination, that eliminates the last thing, is how I would think of that problem.
Thank you for that. And then I guess my second question, because I do depend on Costco at this time, what would you recommend for someone like going about getting more clientele other than the moving part? Because I currently live in like Charlottesville, Virginia. The music scene out here is relatively limited. And I'm not really able to move because my grandma has like a health condition and I help her with like our errands and everything. But like I eventually want to be able to transition from Costco.
Hold that
to
question
doing
one second. I gotta talk to my family for a second. 1 second.
Go ahead.
They're doing the most right now. Hold on.
All right. Yo, shout out to everybody that's in the YouTube right now though. Keeping the chat jumping and shout out to the Wavy Seals Elite for tapping in. While we got Leslie on a quick break, I do want to remind y'all that we will be having Leslie Brathwaite at the Mixnick in Atlanta, along with some other dope engineers. Jay Rich will be there, and KY Engineering, he's on the ticket too. So if y'all are in the Atlanta area or y'all gonna be traveling to the Atlanta area, make sure y'all please check out my website wavywayne.com to get all the information about the conference that's coming up. It's gonna be a panel, it's gonna be mixing competitions, there's gonna be in-person tutorials from Leslie, KY, Jay Rich, and a whole bunch of interactive stuff. And I'm gonna be in the building, all the Wavy Seals Elite gonna be in the building too. So yeah, that's definitely going down July 15th in ATL. And my man is Bizak.
Sorry, I'm back. When you got a family, and my daughter just came back from New York. My other daughter just got her hair done, and everybody out there yelling and screaming. Like, yeah, I'm on with Wavy Wayne.
Yeah. We ain't gonna hold you too much longer. We're gonna let you get to the family.
It's all good.
So JP, I think you was finishing up a question right before you got cut off there.
Yes, my bad. Go back to your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just I guess to make it simplified, how would you go about getting more clientele in a area that has a limited or like relatively lower music scene without having the option to move?
I would tell you that you're probably trying to solve a problem that you can't solve, which is if you're already saying that the area is limited in scope and depth and people, you're probably not going to get more clientele. The only answer to your question, more than likely, is to move. And usually I tell people when you're in a small market and you're trying to get more clientele, you got to move. So now the question is, I think you alluded to the fact that you're not in a position to move yet. So then your goal right now, you always have to look at life in the steps of what you're trying to accomplish. So before you accomplish getting more clientele, you have to move. That's your goal, moving. So moving is the goal now. Now what you got to do is put every plan in place to figure out, how do I move? You see what I'm saying? Get your mind off of the more clientele, put your mind and brain power into, how do I move? Moving is going to get you to solve the next problem. But the first problem you got to solve is you're not in an area where there's more clientele. Make
Yes,
sense?
sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Right on.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, JP. Good question. All right. Now I'm gonna go to some questions here from the YouTube chat. Shout out to my YouTube community, man. I love y'all so much. I got a question from Katie Carter. Katie says, do you think you need to finish school in order to be a great engineer and artist? I have a calling and school has killed my creative push.
Wow. Depends on what you're learning. I mean, and it depends on, some people don't learn that way. For some people, school and learning and classes doesn't compute. So it might be about what kind of learner you are, and it might be about what is your actual goal. But if you don't feel like you're learning anything, that's probably not going to help. And then if you don't learn that way, that's probably not going to help. So I think it's a very specialized question based on a lot of circumstances around that specific circumstance.
Okay. Yeah, there's no one way to answer that for sure. Ja Dread on the YouTube chat asks, do you use parallel processing? So
I do not.
Okay.
It's not my thing. Don't really love it. Yeah, my brain just doesn't work that way. So yeah, it's not a thing for me. Parallel compression, parallel EQ, all that parallel stuff doesn't work for me. I just do what I need to do on the track that I'm doing it and keep it moving, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's just not how my brain works.
Understood. All right. Order from the YouTube chat says, hey, Leslie, it's been a question for a long time. How do you order your vocal chain, or can you say in what sequence you put plugins?
Yes. And again, it's less about the what and more about the why. And the why is simply, I follow the steps of the things I don't like. So usually what you have, and again, this is not a prescribed order. This is not it always goes like this. Usually it goes like this, which is, for me, if it's a singing vocal, the first thing I have to do more than anything else is I gotta correct the bad notes. I can't even, it sounds like nails on a chalkboard when the notes are bad. So the very first thing I gotta do is auto-tune or melodyne if it's singing and there are notes that are off. That's the first thing. That's the first thing I have to fix, is the singing. Then I DS, take away what I don't like. S's are usually pretty harsh, so that's gonna be the first thing that pisses me off. So I'm gonna DS. Then I compress just a little bit, just to tame the vocal so it's not all over the place. And then I EQ. And when I EQ, again, still the subtractive mentality, which is, what don't I like about this sound? What am I taking away? So that's kind of how I approach that. And then from there, might do a little bit of compression with the Fairchild. And then may DS again if after I compress it and add some high end to brighten things up. I may DS again, just if the S's start to stick out again. That's usually what that looks like. And again, it's less about what I'm doing and more about the why. I'm explaining the why because that's more important than the what.
Yeah. Good points. This other question that says, how do you learn to hear compression? That's Tyrone Marcel.
You can pretty much hear it just working. Whenever a compressor is working too hard, like I said, I think compression is when you can hear the compressor working, it's working too hard. So whenever you can hear it actually biting down on the signal, like when something tries to get loud, but the compressor reacts to it, and you can hear it kind of crunching it down, to me, that's too much compression. Otherwise, compression isn't something that you should hear. Compression is something that you should get a sense that it's working when nothing is jumping out at you, is what I'm saying. I don't think you should be able to hear compression. If you're hearing it, I think it's you have too much of it on.
Yeah. Okay, and this question, the next one that I have, it's like a combination of a few that I see in the chat and one that I have on my own, because I've learned in your kind of experience that you like to start off mixing with a vocal. Now, do you start that vocal off? Are you soloing that vocal? And if so, like, how long are you working with a vocal in solo while you kind of treating that vocal, and kind of what's your whole thought process behind soloing certain elements out in a mix?
I don't necessarily solo it, but what I do is I start with the lead, and then I bring up the backgrounds with the lead and I work with those. And there's no time limit or time length. It's just however long it needs to be worked on. So, and again, I try to move very quick. I try to make decisions quick, because what I find is making quick decisions mean you're trusting your gut more, and you tend to make better decisions. So that's why I've always harping on trying to make decisions quick. I developed that skill set from an early age of mixing quicker, because I did realize that the decisions you make instinctively as a mixer usually tend to be the right ones. Usually tend, like I've seen clients come in my session and they'll want to make changes. And I can tell you how many times the night has went like this. They come in, they hear it. Oh, let's change this. Let's add this. Da, da, da. Let's do this. That goes on for like 2 hours. And then at the end of the night, they go, they listen to it and they go, you know what? Just put everything back to how you had it in print. Because they know instinctively they want it. So for some people, that's their process. They have to work through that.
Yeah.
And they know that what they heard and felt instinctively at first is what they loved. But they needed to work through this process to see if they could get to this other magical thing. And so a lot of times you just trust your instinct.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, I guess let's get one last question in here, and we gonna save the rest of this for the mix, Nick, that we gonna have you at. I don't want to give everybody too much today. So let's see, what was that question? It was hey Leslie, FSU alumni. Nope, that ain't the question. Well, basically the question that I wanted to ask you that I saw in the chat, I think I lost it, but basically the person was asking that they're saying that they're recently about to graduate from Full Sail, and what's your advice for them about to enter the industry?
First piece of advice is make sure you get to know your career development rep at Full Sail. I think that's one of the great things about Full Sail is they have a team of people, staff of over, I think about 200 employees that are focused on career development and helping you get out in the industry.
Yep.
So you take advantage of those people for sure. That's part of your tuition. That's what you pay for. Second thing is, again, come out with the mentality of filter all your decisions through, can this make me better? Instead of, is this where I want to be? Or is this goal I'm trying to accomplish? Or is this going to make me more money? Make sure the filter that you make decisions about where you're going to live, where you're going to go, what studios you're applying to, what opportunities you take is it going to make me better? That is the number one filter you should make decisions through. And then my absolute number one, if you forget everything else I said tonight, don't forget this: do not move back home. Don't do that. I'm telling you, that is the one piece of advice that will probably save your career. In some cases, it could save your life. I'm telling you, don't move back home. People have the wrong impression of home. And let me tell you, we are the only, when I say only, fact check me, we're the only animal on the planet that does that. Where you grow up ain't where you're supposed to live. That is not the natural order of things. Get out of the place you grew up and go somewhere else. Yeah. Don't move back home. Even if you're from a city that's popping, that is conducive to what you're trying to do. So for instance, if you're from Atlanta, let's say you were born in Atlanta, you go to school and you want to work with all the artists that are up and coming and popping in Atlanta, move somewhere out in the sticks is what I'm trying to tell you. Move to a different side of town move to a different suburb. Just don't move back home. That's all I gotta say.
Word up. Yo, Leslie Brathwaite, thank you so much for taking your time tonight and sharing all of your wisdom, your experience, your gems with us. It's meaning more to me than I can ever express to you. And I'm sure everyone that's been blessed by your words tonight and that they feel the same way. So thank you. You're a legend. I can't wait to meet you in person and share the stage with you at Mixnick in July, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We're gonna do that big. That's gonna be dope.